Hey, welcome back to the Metropolitan Grid. My name is Andre. How's it going today? Today is a special day. It is Fite Nite 2021 round 3. We're starting in just about, 5 minutes. Hopefully you're doing well today. I got a lot of windows open today, a lot of things to worry about, so hopefully everything goes a bit smoothly. How's everyone doing? Yo, it's so good. Hey, it's Thursday again. Yo, welcome back. It's another Thursday. We just streamed last night with Eric. Had a lot of fun, and now today we are going to finally get to the Fite Nite. If you don't know what Fite Nite is, we're going to be running through a bit of the format, what's going on. We'll be starting pretty promptly. We're looking at about 4 rounds of Netrunner today across 4 hours. It should be some really good Netrunner. We have some of the best, most competitive decks in the format and some of the best players as well. I will be joined in just a bit by Sengren's going to be joining in to help with some commentary, and Kat as well will be dropping in at some point within the stream. So I'm excited to be joined by some guests. You're not going to be seeing a lot of me today. I'm actually wearing the same clothing I was wearing last night. I don't think that's embarrassing. So we're going to be largely looking at the games zoomed in. We have some deck lists as well. It is worth noting, if you're watching on Twitch specifically, I have just spun up a new Byroid. So if we have some chat commands right now. It's pretty simple. So at any point in time, if you want to write !rules, !Fite Nite, !decks, !deck lists, any of those commands will give you the information that you're looking for. So you can try that out. And Nino Vodnik, our new Slavic Byroid, will be there to answer your call. Otherwise, if you're not familiar with what's going on today, this is Fite Nite. I'm going to move my face a wee bit. Hold on. Maybe if I hit this button first. Yeah, that sounds good. It is a tournament. This has gone through 3 rounds. We are the 3rd and final round today. There's basically 3 teams of 4 players. These are international teams representing different regions around the world. On the one today, we have 2 of the teams left. We have the Process representing the UK. They also have a podcast that you might be familiar. Check the Process on, I don't know, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's a really good podcast. And they have 4 players today that will be playing. So I'll make sure I get everyone's names right. Yeah, this is Leech Road, Chris Ferg, Nima Maya, Binary Dog, some of the strongest competitive Netrunner players to date. We have an ex-world champion in there. We have a current Continentals champion, and I might be missing other accolades. I need to do a bit more research. And on the Snare Bears side, we also have some daring runners and some daring corps. We have Analyze Chris, Big Unit 3000, Scry, and Groankopf. We'll be playing today. How the format works, it's a team of 4 players. One player goes up against another player from the opposite team. One side will be playing runner, one side will be playing corp. First round, I think it's randomized what they're starting as. And basically each player has to represent a different, I was going to say different faction, but it's actually not that simple because there's generally 4 factions on the corp side. You're actually, the only rule this year is specifically you have to represent a different ID when you're playing, and you have to represent a different archetype, and no 3 of the same faction can show up. So for instance, if we're looking here at the Snare Bears lineup, there are 2 HB decks, but they're both different identities, and they have a different playstyle. They're trying to win in a different way. This unit's deck, I think, is really exciting. We'll see that. So that's basically how it is. The opponents match up against one another, and if it's a best of 1 for them. Whoever wins goes on to the next round, fights the next opponent, switch sides, fights the next opponent from the team until there is only 1 team standing. So far, both of these teams are 0-1, losing to the NWE B team of the last 2 weeks. So this is for the very important 2nd place. Whoever's going here for the hopefully those 4 wins, not in a row, but maybe just 4 wins will be good enough. Yo, Talasan, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Also, yo, Cactus, welcome. Tuning in my lunch break. Enjoy your lunch. We're going to be here. It's not the B team, the beta team. It's not the beta. Maybe it's the beta team. Maybe I'm getting this wrong. This is for who's not last. That's one way of looking at it. I guess we're fighting our way out of the bottom, but 2nd place is a nice place to be. Hope you're having a good Friday. Yo, Doomster House, I'm doing well. Okay, Yasengren is just about to join us. Let me just pull him in. This will take maybe a second. Let me give you a call. Okay, Sengren also just got a new microphone, so I'm pretty stoked. I just want to make sure his comms are online. Give me 1 second to sort this out. Yo, what up? Hey, I can hear you. Just give me 1 second. And now the stream can hear you. How's it going, Sengren?
Hello, I'm doing well. Having a good day so far.
Yeah, I'm just gonna boost your levels. Yeah, thank you so much for joining in. I know it's a bit of an awkward timing. We have to get people from the US or Americas and the UK in at the same time slot, so the middle of the day of a Friday works. How's your day been so far? I appreciate taking the time off to join. This is really cool.
No, I'm really looking forward to this. I've been very excited to see these matches and decks play out so far, so I'm excited to see hopefully Snare Bears take home a win.
Yeah, that's I think The only separation right now is an ocean, but I feel like us all being on the same side, we have to kind of, be impartial. And by that, I mean, root for the Snare Bears. I think it's going to be a good match. I feel like there's no, okay. So excuse me. Sangren, we don't have too much time before jumping into the game. So real quick, I know you put a video going through the rundown of these decks, talking about the meta right now. I think we see some very common things across the board. There's constantly 419, there's constantly Virus Max, then there's usually an Apocalypse deck of some sort, and then a fourth slot that kind of varies between the teams. On the Corp side too, I guess it's a bit wider than that. I think there's some good stuff represented across the board. Everyone has a CTM deck. Everyone's playing Precision Design, if I'm not mistaken. What does it look like today?
So today we see sort of the most widespread of corps. Like both sides took one deck I felt was like very meta strong, being either the Precision Design Rush deck that the Process is bringing, or the Sports Metal deck that Snare Bears is bringing. And they have very different CTMs lists, and their other two corps look wildly different despite being inside kind of similar factions. So
yeah, and that's actually something that's always worth knowing about this format, because a player could be eliminated in a single round. So there is a chance that we won't see some of the decks that we're excited to see today, unfortunately. I'm like really stoked to see this hard-hitting news Asa group, which is a deck that we actually saw a year ago at like Intercontinentals play out. It was a slightly different list with things like MCA austerity policy, things like false lead. But this is like just kind of like, I'm going to jam and I'm going to do that Asa group fast thing. And if you're like, if you don't have the economy, I'm going to hit you with those hard hitting news, which is pretty wild in a format that has open deck lists. Like everybody knows what all the cards are here.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, because I've been hearing, I'm friendly with several of the Snare Bears people. So they've been talking up Jonas's Asa list for a long time. So I'm excited to really get to see it in action. I've played around with it a bit myself, and it's definitely a fun list, and I think probably has real non-Swiss cheesing potential as well. So
yeah, you know what? Actually, I think right now our first matchup is going to be Big Unit versus. Let me check who's on the docket here. I have some deck lists that I'll be able to show on stream. Oh, that's not the button I was meant to hit at all. So it looks like we're starting today actually with that Asa group deck. Big Unit is opening against Chris Ferg's Tau Apocalypse deck, which has no misdirection for a Shaper list. You see the decks on screen right now. I'm just going to go over to jinteki.net to get in. Do you know the password, by the way? Have you seen that? I'll message it to you if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've not.
Okay, hold on. Let me just message it straight to you. Apparently, yeah, that B is a S sound in German. That.
Yeah. It's either the S team, the B team, or...
I just sent you the password. So we're going to get in. Again, we are streaming right now on jinteki.net. This is a private lobby because both spectators, they have their hands available. So we're going to make sure that not anyone can walk in there, but we'll be streaming it from here. We have, again, this is round 1. I'm really interested for this deck list. I think we said before, hard-hitting news. Generally in Shaper, we have access to cards like Self-Modifying Code, and this list has no hardware anyways, no simul chips. You have the ability to pull a misdirection to deal with a hard-hitting news. So this matchup, outside of the misdirection, which doesn't exist, it's going to be all about that credit differential.
Yeah, and that's the thing I'm really interested to see. Like, before Gateway release, Shaper was going to struggle to even keep up with this sort of economy that ASA can put out with fully operational and just, sort of a couple of key asset cards.
Yeah.
But we saw that, like, against, I think Chris Fur even playing against CTM with this APOC list, was able to just, like, crush a CTM's economy. And just didn't need the misdirection because he was so rich. It just never really mattered. So I'm going to be really interested to see if Ace is able to put a little more economic pressure. Because I think when I look at these lists, like, there seems to be some ability, if Ace can get a credit lead, to just say, APOC me if you want, I'm going to hit you with the hard-hitting news, and you can't stop me from booming you next turn in a lot of cases.
Yeah, this deck specifically, the Asa group deck, like we're seeing, because APOC is obviously such a big thing in this specific meta, let alone even in the competitive meta outside of this, that there's a lot of tech cards that will show up specifically in Asa lists, right? Like you see border control pretty commonly. Some decks are even slotting MCA austerity, Crisium grid. There's some really good options in faction. We have nothing going on here on the Asa group side. So the APOC is almost definitely going to land. And just like you said, all that matters at that point is just the credit differential.
Yeah, I mean, so I have been playing a lot of an Asa myself that just uses I think maybe they're waiting for us to tell them to start, or maybe they're waiting for Vale to tell them to start.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I'm going to type in. We're good to go on the stream side.
But, and I've just lost my thought. Yeah, so like I've been playing with border control and finding that, often the way it ends up working is you can get apocalypsed and be just fine as Asa because you rebuild. You basically will have 4 clicks immediately after the apocalypse as long as you plan out, as long as you anticipate that it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
So I suspect that's what the big units plan is.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this. So for those who are new to maybe Netrunner starting up, you're seeing a lot more cards outside of System Gateway. Mind you, this is a full standard card pool, the competitive card pool for some of the bigger tournaments for sure. We're looking at ASA Group, which is an HB identity. It says the first time you install a card each turn, you may install an additional non-agenda card from HQ in or protecting that server. And this is often used to install a card in a remote server and then put ice in front of it. And that is such good click economy. On the other side, we have Tau Salonga that lets you reposition ice on scores or steals for agendas. And it looks like we have both keeps on the side. ASA Group just jamming out so aggressive from Jonas. Vitruvius in the remote, Nico, Maryland, and the remote servers. Just absolutely a fantastic start.
Yeah. And this is something that like I think I want to start incorporating into some more of my games of just this like daring the runner to try and do something new in the very first turn. And because most people aren't in the first turn, they're taking the first turn to just set up. And so here Jonas is able to get a very nice Vitruvius score with a Vitruvius counter.
Yeah, seamless launch coming out of hand.
2. So
now, Chris Ferg has that big economy with the double Harbingers, but just like you said, Shaper, this deck specifically is going to be a bit slow to challenge the remote in the early game. And Golo coming down for 5 credits. We don't have a stim hack anymore. You're going to have to pay those real credits to get that installed. And Nico and Maryland taking away.
Yeah, I think as Jonas here, you want to keep this game fast because Chris did install 3 Harbingers on turn 1. So that means over, 9 turns, he's going to be making 3 credits a turn on his Aesops without spending any more money. So, that's, That's 27 credits Chris has virtually over the next 9 turns. So, Jonas, the big unit needs to keep up. Jonas, I guess, that's what I might start calling him, just to say the big unit over and over and over again. And
you see the respect here, right? Like you can't go too hard into the remote servers with an Apocalypse, let alone 2 in hand. So the big unit is just putting 1 piece of ice on R&D. It would force Chris to break that thing, still have 3 cards for Apocalypse. Definitely still possible. Only a Maryland campaign in the remote server. We also have Mayflies in hand, which is fantastic. Not only to ensure the Apocalypse can get off slightly cheaply, but let you contest right after. Opening hand has boom, and again, hard-hitting news is a 3 of, if I'm not mistaken, in the deck list, and that's such an important thing here.
It's actually just a 1 of.
Just a 1 of?
Hard-hitting news is a 3 of?
Oh, excuse me.
You're assuming you'll find because you have an archive memories.
Yeah, sorry. I meant the hard-hitting news for sure. Yeah, that is the pressure card that Jonas, big unit here, is definitely drawing into, just to be able to threaten the credit differential. Because Chris, in terms of economy, you're right. Those Harbingers are going to be a lot of money. We've seen 1 creative commission. There's still sure gambles, I think Teleware contracts, so still definitely a lot more money to come.
Yeah, and the tricky thing for Jonas here is to decide how much he wants to invest in his board state. Does he want to power... Because every ice he puts not on the central is ice that's probably going to get wiped away with an Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he needs to make these remote servers so that he can make his fully operational more powerful. Because every additional remote with a piece of ice becomes an extra trigger on a fully operational. And that's a lot of the way he can generate an economic lead on this Tau deck is playing fully operationals for lots of points. I'll be interested to see if he tries to do some jamming with this Ikoa or just tries to get some money and maybe even draw for the hard-hitting news that he doesn't actually have in hand yet.
Yeah, last turn Chris just clicked for credits knowing that they have exactly in their hand what they need to Apocalypse. Fully operational popping off, echoing 3 more times, drawing 4 cards, gaining 2 credits for a single click. We have a lot more options, and stacking things like barriers, stacking even things like sentries is really good. If you need attacks out the Ngolo, force a second breaker because it can only break 1 non-code gate a turn. Now we're looking for a vanilla on HQ, which, you can kick through that, leave the paperclip still in the heap, which did get thrown out on turn 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see this server 6 here almost feels a little greedy to me because there's no reason for Chris not to just Apocalypse here. So now, admittedly, the Mayfly isn't down, so potentially there's some risk. But
Yeah, Chris has an option here. You can either choose to install the paperclip, pay 5 to get through the vanilla, get that card flipped face down if an apocalypse triggers, or go ahead and try and use Dengolo on it. Looks like Dengolo is the option, painting it for 2 credits, breaking for 1, and then it's assuming R&D is not a sentry specifically, the only thing they can't break if they want to keep poking and threatening that apocalypse. But apocalypse is well within reach, and Jonas doesn't have the punishment here in hand. Iqbal actions from hand, a big choice here. He's choosing to take it for 3 credits. Sorry, for 2 credits and a click, so Apocalypse not possible. But we've now just pushed the vanilla off of HQ onto server 1. Mind you, Tao's effect being relevant. First time the game. Turn 1 doesn't really matter with 1 ice.
Yeah, so as Jonas here, I think I might even use the Vitruvius counter and just draw a bunch with a fully operational. Except that I forgot there's an agenda on the board.
Yeah, behind the white space still.
Attention.
So up on 4 points.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's like, if Chris Furrick had chosen not to steal the Ikawa project and just say, well, Jonas can never score that, and had continued with his Apocalypse plan, he would have been rewarded with Vitruvius.
Yeah.
So I don't I feel like as Tao, you can kind of lean into the Apocalypse a little bit here. You don't have to. Yeah. You don't have to play Honest Netrunner against this deck.
Yeah, no, for sure. If you access that Iqua project in hand and you Apocalypse, that agenda's not going anywhere. It's still going to be an HQ the turn after, and they might not even have ice to protect it. So yeah, definitely a choice there, whether you want to blow up the board state. We're poking HQ, or sorry, R&D here. That's a gatekeeper. If you want to res, it is 6 strength. Lines up really well with Ngolo, breaking it for 4 credits. Some of the best breaker in the game for this specific turn.
Yeah, but even in this case, Jonas, it's still worth it for Jonas because he's spending 3 credits and Chris has to spend 4.
Yeah.
So it ends up being, net in his favor again.
Here we go. We're running HQ. It's another vanilla, and now Chris has run archives as well. So Chris has perfect information to figure out how he wants to deal with the vanilla. I have no doubt we're just going to paint that, not having to spend the credits on the paperclip. So 3 to get in, and an Axis here could hit the Vashron in hand, and that will put Chris on what will eventually be 6 points. Mind you, Vashron, a hell of a card.
We'll have to see. Yeah, Moonbed Temple is sort of the molding. One interesting thing, and I don't know if this was intentional, Jonas didn't res the Moonbed Temple to help pay for the Gatekeeper. It saves a credit, so not a huge deal. I wonder if that's just to try and keep some hidden information on the board, which can be really valuable.
Information might not last too long, mind you. Core pausing to act there, popping the Spin Doctor to shuffle back in. I'm not sure we saw. Oh, right, we're right in the middle of resolving it. Yeah.
So I think we'll just roll back this click, and this happens sometimes when it doesn't happen when you're playing over the board, of course, but online these sort of things happen all the time.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, obviously, we have open deck lists. If a Shaper runs Archives for no reason, you kind of have some suspicions what might be going on here. So Big Unit definitely wants to pop that Spin Doctor and shuffle 2 cards from Archives back into R&D before the Spin Doctor is also destroyed.
I don't know which 2 you put back, though. It's the Nico campaign, and I would probably put back the Seamless Launch myself because the fully operational is more accessible in Archives right now because of the Vitruvius counter. But
yeah, that's true.
Jonas disagrees.
No, admittedly too, you can always use that Vitruvius counter for that for the Seamless in a pinch if you need to. But
yeah, that's certainly true.
Yeah, no, we just redrew into fully operational in hand, so at least that did work out in the end. Now, of course, Apocalypse, one of the most powerful cards in the whole game, flipping Chris Ferg's whole board state face down. Aesop's and Golo and Harbinger, these can only be unlocked, mind you, by another Aesop's pawn shop selling these cards for 3 credits. And Big Unit jamming out there. Did draw into the hard-hitting news. Able to throw the book. Trace 4. Not going to have a link on Tau, so we have to spend 6 credits. Make that a Trace 10.
Yeah, that takes it to Trace 10. And so now Chris has to decide if he's going to spend his whole turn clearing these tags or if he's going to try and win the game with a lot of Vashrons. Hopefully you guys can't hear the train going through.
Yeah, and that's definitely an option here. We have seen that Boom, actually, well, it is in Archives. Was just discarded. Now, it doesn't really matter with the access to the Vitruvius counter, and Chris has a huge decision to make here. Clearing down to only 1 tag. Staying on 3 credits. Again, Boom, mind you, will do 7 meat damage if there are 2 tags to the runner, so no other single tag punishment in this list. APOC train rolling through. I think we might have lost you, Sengrin. Hey, you there? I don't think we can hear you anymore. We're definitely still in the call, though, but you're not lighting up. No ways, we'll get that fixed out. So Big Unit figuring out what to do here. The Mamba Temple in the remote server is not going to give them any additional value exactly this turn. Not a Rashida, not a Marilyn or a Nico ticking away. And right now, the economy for Chris Ferg is going to be a bit weaker for a minute. As soon as that Aesop's pawn shop shows up, it'll be a totally different situation. Vacheron in the remote server, and sometimes you just want to get that out of, well, I guess there's no imps or anything, but getting that on the table if they steal it is sometimes not the worst if you have a strong scoring plan for the next couple turns. Behind a Gatekeeper and a Jeeves in the next remote, you actually can score that out. You might be short some credits. 2 to res the Jeeve, actually 1 only now with the Mamba Temple. Is this game? We have advance into the pull from their archives. A seamless launch. That is game point. Credit perfect. Vacheron. Straight out there. Super aggressive while Chris is just clawing to recover from that apocalypse. Good game. Wow.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're perfect now. You even sound better.
Perfect. Okay.
What happened?
It switched mics on me.
Oh, this is so much nicer. This is the new microphone, huh?
Oh, I wonder if it was. I sort of assumed it was on the new mic before, but apparently it wasn't.
Oh, this sounds great, man. Welcome back. Did you see the ending of that?
All right. Yeah, no, but that was a crazy ending. I thought one of the neat things this ASA can do is sort of set up for recover from the apocalypse quickly. And we saw if Chris Ferg wanted to get a breaker down, he was going to be in hard-hitting news range again.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the neat threat against apocalypses specifically. So.
Yeah, and you saw also there at the end of the game too, while the APOC was a threat, Jonas did keep the Gatekeeper in hand, understanding that keeping an ice in hand is generally very good for recovery after the apocalypse. It lets you protect something on the table. Now, they did draw a second, but keeping anything in the remote server would have been good the turn after. So ice in hand is always a really good way to recover. You don't want to overcommit into it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's one of the... I think one of the reasons that I like ASA against Apocalypse is as long as you keep one ice in hand, you can recover very, very quickly. And so that's sort of its soft upside compared to something like Precision Design, which I think most people would agree is the more powerful deck in the format generally right now.
Yeah.
So,
and you saw
that was super cool.
That was super cool. That wasn't like what we might have seen last year with MC Austerity, False Lead forcing you into taking those tags. It was just, here's hard-hitting news as an additional threat you have to respect on top of everything else. Just an additional, not even a win condition directly, but something that your opponent has to respect to stop them from just rolling over you.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me almost of like Argus decks from pre-Uprising release, where they couldn't stop you from getting the remote, really. And this ASA can't actually stop you from getting the remote, but they're going to force you to play your breakers. And then they're going to say, well, did you keep up with my economy? And if you didn't, that's what the hard-hitting news is for. It's not my primary win condition. It's the fork I present you when you try to go too fast. So.
All right, you know what? I think Kat's just going to be able to join us for round 2. So I'm going to pull them in.
Exciting.
Let's see how this works. I have to send a friend request. Okay, give me 1 second. So it looks like Chris Ferg is now going to be out, unfortunately. That is our Europe, Africa Continental Champion from last year, if I'm not mistaken. So that means we won't be able to see their Precision Design. So we're going to see a bit less PD today. That's the
actually that's the only PD today.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, the Snare Bears were less hot on it, or more maybe Jonas, I think, probably liked this ASA group more than he liked PD. And the Snare Bears was a big fan of their sports medalist. So,
yo, Sangren, I have to add you as a friend too on Discord. This is how I make friends, just so I can do a DM. So if you accept that friend request, I'll pull Kat in. Thank you.
Great. Let's all be friends.
All right, that should spin up soon.
Yeah. Well, this beats me having to make a second profile named Zenskaren. Zenskaren for.
Yo, Kat, how's it going? Can you hear us?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
hey,
perfect. Yeah, how's it going? Cool. Thanks for joining us.
It's doing all right. Okay, so next game is going to be Binary Dogs on Corp.
Binary Dogs, okay, versus Chris. Okay, perfect. I need to spin that up. What I want to do real quick, just to give a shout out to both of y'all for joining me, just for the people who don't know who might be tuning in the channel. So firstly, Sangren, if you want to introduce yourself, I have your YouTube channel right now on the screen.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. I do some YouTube content. I mostly steal from people like Kat, who have taught me good lessons about Netrunner. But I try and do little kind of reviews of replays mostly, and also have done some kind of previews and reviews of some of this Fite Nite material. I've been playing off and on since 2014, and have done okay a couple of times. Did pretty well at Continentals last year. But generally, I think still classify myself sort of an intermediate player. So, yeah.
I've been a huge fan of the YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, youtube.com, or just search Sangren SC as you see on the screen to get in there. Give some views and subscribes. It's really good stuff. Specifically talking like all the stuff that came out recently about Fite Nite, but a lot of good replay reviews and stuff like that. I'm also really happy to be joined by Kat. Kat, I'm showing off right now your Twitter, or sorry, this is your Instagram, excuse me, and you might be recognizing some of this art if you're familiar with System Gateway.
Oh Lord, I have not updated my Instagram in a very long time. I uploaded like half the cards I did for System Gateway and then forgot to do the rest. So
still, it's great stuff. Yeah, can you introduce yourself a bit?
Well, I'm Kat Kizra on Slack or any other platform really. I'm technically also one of the people on the Snare Bears team. I'm reasonably competent at Netrunner and occasionally do art and alt arts for the game.
Yeah, actually, I now have open your NPC. This is make playing cards where you can make a store and sell some of the stuff that you have. It gets printed. I know personally, I have a lot of these alt arts, and they're some of my favorites. Those Amakuas specifically, I'm a big fan of.
I think I've only played with your alt art Amakuas. I don't think I've ever played the FFG Amakua, just because of when I've been in and out of the game. But
it is the most popular alt art I've ever made, so
it's great. I remember at Worlds, people were just buying like stacks and stacks of them. Okay, so I have some deck lists today. I'm going to pull it up. Kat, I'm going to DM you the password because we are up in just a second. So right now we have the big unit who's on a Lu APOC deck. So only 2 Apocalypse, 2 Pawn Shops against Binary Dog, who's on a Controlling the Message. And this is I think the most standard Controlling the Message we've seen so far. We're looking at 2 Sansan grids, full set of traps on Mumbed Virtual Tours. Here, Kat, I'm just going to send you the password real quick.
Yep, 1 second. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I brought this the processes CTM list to my casual night the other night, which shows how tryhard I go on casual fun nights, and got wiped. I was playing against a different Snare Bear who was playing this APOC list and got basically wiped every time we played. But I don't, some of that is also I am a very bad CTM player. So
yes.
Sorry, good.
No.
I'll just
go ahead.
This APOC Lu deck I actually find extremely difficult to pilot for the biggest reason being that you have to be very conservative with your economy. It's not really like standard Anarch deck where you just run and faceplant everything. You sort of need to sit there and pile up money, and having that giant pile of money is your threat against PD or something, because it's very scary to score when the runner sits there with 20 credits and you know that they can APOC you if they want.
So I take it in this sort of matchup, when you have Lu who has access to APOC, we don't have any in hand right now, but we do have at least good enough economy for the start, 2 access to breakers. I take it you don't want to start poking assets and upgrades on turn 1. You just want to set up for the long game APOC, or do you feel like you have to start cleaning up the board until you can get to that APOC situation?
I think it depends a bit on your start. This is honestly a bit of a rough start, I would say, for the APOC Lu. There's not a whole lot of speed in it. But on the bright side, your card ID is draw, so you might be okay.
Yeah, and this idea is so interesting to see it played. We've been seeing this show up in the competitive season this last couple of months, but not so much for Lu's ID, but mostly just on the fact that it is a 40 card minimum deck size. None of these decks are running things like Imp. They're not actually triggering his ability outside of accessing, assets or upgrades if you really want to, but it's just a smaller deck is more consistent.
Yeah, so one of the things I was finding a lot is that basically you could often leave CTM going for a turn or two while Lu just set up his econ. And as long as you can handle stuff like a bankers in time, it was generally okay. Just built up a lot of money. CTM was this particular version of CTM was a little slow to get rolling. And then you could land the Apocalypse at some point when you felt like the board state was sort of well set up for you to punish.
Yeah, talking about slow to set up, that's 2 daily casts, which is good money, but only in 3 to 4 turns from now. So Unit is going to be scrambling a bit. There is that commercial bankers group on the table. That's 3 credits a turn, one of the biggest amount you can get from a single asset drip off top of turn, and with the hard-hitting news in hand as well as a threat. Now that is being defended by Mumbet Virtual Tour. Big Unit has some options sometimes to interact with this with fewer than 5 credits, but if you have fewer than 5 credits, the hard-hitting news might just land here.
Yeah, the one big card Jonas can be looking for here, and Kat can probably speak to this as a better play than I can, but looking for something like a Deuces Wild so that you can trash the bankers group and then dip below the Mumbet Virtual Tour and then still have an ability to clear the tag and gain some kind of positive tempo in that direction can be a nice play for this Lu deck when trying to control these early assets.
So Unit is checking these remote servers. Sometimes a 3-2 or 3-1 agenda gets snuck out here. Looks like it's just a pad campaign and daily business show, and we're going in, and it looks like we're going to be interacting with that commercials bankers group. Going to be able to duck at the Mumbet Virtual Tour. We know there's only 2 upgrades in the list, so we're sure that this is not a prize tag. Nothing too scary to worry about, but now Big Unit can take a tag. I don't know if they're going to clear the tag. They do trash something, gain a card and a credit with Lu, but that hard-hitting news is going to land pretty easily, especially now that they've cleared the tag to protect their daily casts.
Yeah, that said, it's early enough in the game, it's unlikely that any of the major punishment cards are going to come down to land the tags, so Jonas will have some time to sort of recover and bounce back, and because he's disrupted the big econ card, he is buying himself long-term play here.
Yeah, he's basically saying you don't have the boom and none of your other tag punish will do anything, so hard hitting me if you want.
Yeah, so Daily Business Show now, Res and Server 3 is going to give dogs a bit of more control of what they draw, ensuring they don't flood up on agendas, gives them a higher probability of finding exactly those punishment cards they need on this board state. Pad campaign, also some nice drip economy that Unit is going to struggle to trash, perhaps. Now, the problem is all this resource economy we see, 2 daily casts, 1 in hand, deliberated accounts, those are all resources. And I don't know if those tags are coming off anytime soon, so Big Unit's economy might just be tied up in something that will not stay on the table if Binary Dogs has the credits to trash them.
It's going to be a little bit hard for Binary Dogs to actually pay to trash these resources, though. They're going to start their next turn on 3 credits.
Yeah.
Assuming the pad campaign doesn't get trashed, which I would
think
be
you
pretty
should.
surprised if
Yeah.
it did. I think you leave the pad campaign here.
I don't know.
You usually should leave the pad campaign.
I always love these times where the CTM, throws the book at you and they're on 2 credits and without any other resources. Like, they're not making any other money, right?
Yeah.
Career Fair drawing up. That's good. That gets you access to either the Liberated, which you can free as many credits as you want from it, or even the daily cast. And, exactly like you said, Dog is going to struggle to trash multiple resources, let alone sometimes even 1.
So the argument for trash and pad campaign, I think, is so that he can't go click boom, but it is going to be a lot of Jonas's money.
Yeah. Sure Gamble does make that a bit easier as well. Now, again, the Daily Business Show also a threat. Every time this is on, it gives basically Binary Dogs 2 draws to get to the boom. Not that they can exactly play it this turn. Well, with the pad campaign, they can. So another option if you want to roll for it. Unit has...
Yeah, I sort of assumed Jonas would be dropping some tags this turn because he could have gone down, he could have gone to 0 credits, have 1 tag, and probably be okay still. Like, both he and Binary Dogs would be sort of playing this scrappy, like 1 to 5 credit Netrunner style against each other. But I'll be interested to see, this is very much, you don't have the boom, you're not going to draw the boom, and you can't stop me, so...
Beal, God from HQ, they're on a run into an F2P. 4 credits to res that. Now, Unit, again, knows the whole deck list, can make some decisions to figure out whether there's anything they're scared of here. Filtered draw with Daily Business Show. We have an AR enhanced security. Doesn't matter too much when the runner's already tagged, but a Rashida can definitely help you draw into that win condition, that boom you're looking for. Also, real quick, for those in Twitch chat, if you want to type in !decks or !deck list, our new Byroad helper will be able to give you the link if you want to see the full list. So at this point, it looks like Binary Dogs isn't going to go for any of the trashes here. Do you think that Big Unit has the time to clear all the tags? I think you do.
I think
yeah. Yeah, I would definitely look at clearing all the I would clear the tags here. You have enough economy that you'll recover, and you'll recover probably faster than binary dogs
Yeah.
can, with at
With
least
only
what's shown
a
on the board.
Yeah, with only a pad campaign on the board, Jonas is in a much better spot recovery wise. The problem is when that Malia goes out, if it goes out on liberated accounts, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely disastrous potentially. And here you do have the remote server, the Mumbed Virtual Tour, and Big Unit now on 13 credits, unable to dodge that 5 credit loss. Clearing down to only 1 tag, 1 click left here if they want to check server 2. Now, mind you, you could always trash the new card because you know which one is the Mumbed Virtual Tour, which one isn't, and always boost into the CTM trace if you need to really dodge that 5 credit. But it looks like Rashid is going to fire here. 1 tag means there's no real punishment. Not drawing any punishment off the top. A Bologna, another agenda. Some pretty taxing ice as well. Feels like Binary Dogs lost a lot of their gusto. They need to start jamming things on our remote server, even scoring an AR enhanced security behind a turnpike, and just kind of hope or bluff that you have that hard-hitting news coming off the top of your deck next turn.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the Ares is both like a really good card to have scored and also kind of blank in a lot of Apocalypse setups because 1 tag doesn't do anything for you. You really want to have 2 tags somehow. And this Lou deck does have ways of, if it picks up tags midway through the turn of making the Apocalypse, of dropping the tags so that it still gets to the Apocalypse and only have 1 tag at the end of the turn, which sort of then laughs at all of the tag punishment in the CTM list that's all based around having 2 or more tags.
And there you go, career fair coming down on liberated accounts. There's no Molly on the table right now, so not that Binary can like snap res to deny 16 credits until you deal with that Biroid. But we are looking at the AR enhanced security in server 2.
Jonas does take a very polite pause after installing.
Yeah, right? Yeah, huge respect there. It's such a, like, I don't know whether Jonas was specifically worried about that, like, oh, I have to try for this. I'm not too sure if this is going to work out. We've cleared the last tag now. 12 crits on liberated. Still a good target for Molly if you want that. Daily Business Show, the second big res. We're now drawing 3 cards off mandatory draw, putting 2 from those on the bottom of R&D. So lets you get the agendas out of the way, draw deeper into the hard-hitting news. This sort of like filter draw is just so absolutely powerful.
Yeah, I would be a little. I feel like you do want to Malia that liberated account, just lock up some of that money because you're not making money that fast here as Binary Dogs, and it's Malia can be a fairly big tempo swing because yeah, it basically blanks all the money you would get. Yeah, and there it goes.
Malia going for that shoulder lift. That liberated account is no longer accessible. So if Big Unit wants to go to get their money, they have to go trash Malia, spend 3 credits. They will get their card draw. They will get their credit. And then on top of that, deal with that controlling the message trace. Now poking straight into the Spin Doctor, shuffling back into hard-hitting news and a commercial bankers group, both cards that you're happy to draw on just about any turn. And now that a run has been made, hard-hitting news is a threat. Doesn't need a successful run, mind you. Just any run allows that card to be fired if Binary can find it.
Chances are he will find it. He also has the archives in hand if he wants to. I think it's not necessarily the best idea at the moment, depending on how the credit differential works out at the end of this turn.
Yeah, I would agree. And getting that Rashida there is a very nice hit for Jonas. Stopping the Rashidas from going is a big deal. Okay, and then he goes, because he's already trashed something else, goes and hits the Malia or Malia just to unlock his econ a little bit more.
And that's such a big deal when playing against controlling the message. It fires a trace 4, give a tag on the first card you trash. So a lot of times runners want to stack multiple trashes in the same turn to avoid multiple tags over multiple turns. And just scoring out there, that AR enhanced security, first card you trash each turn, a tag, even if that card is not installed.
And that's probably one of the biggest things I noticed that newer players struggle against with CTM, is that they trash things as they see them on the board instead of taking like one big turn to trash everything. But if you're trashing one thing every turn, you're paying so much more because you're paying into that trace every single time.
Yeah. And it's also an interesting thing you saw from the Big Unit. It was a trace 4 not boosted. And Jonas there chose to boost their link to 4. So basically not spending a click and 2 credits to remove the trace. It's very comparable to spending 4 on the spot and saving a click, as long as your click is, more valuable than a credit.
Yeah, and now Jonas is saying, well, I've got the board under control. There's no threats that CTM is putting out. I can build up for my Apocalypse again. So just drawing a bunch into the deck. The Deuces Wild, I suspect he sat on the Deuces Wild for a little bit because I had to play, my opponent, when I was out on the casual night, had to play against me of, well, if I can trash a card on one of my R&D or HQ runs, I can use the Deuces Wild to make the final run on Archives and then clear the tag that I picked up from the Ares.
Yeah, that's
so
nice.
that I can play the Apocalypse, and I only have to battle the CTM trace to stay on one tag at the end of my turn, so CTM doesn't just get the free boom. But
so this is such a difficult situation right now, right? Because a lot of times how the CTM deck will play out, they'll ice the Centrals as much as they need to, and then generally push out a remote server with something relatively taxing on it, like a toll booth. But the problem with this matchup is that even if you push for the remote server, as long as the runner can threaten Apocalypse, it doesn't matter how strong your remote server is, that they can pull down your whole board. So Binary Dogs is forced to spend maybe more ice than they're used to on central servers before they can even consider pushing into a remote. So I'm not sure what the scoring plan is outside of maybe sticking a Sands and City Grid, maybe just one ice, something taxing, annoying enough. Not that we've seen any breakers on Jonas's side, but 5 to 15 credits. Hard hitting news looks so far away.
Cal, I guess a question for you. Would you ever think about moshing away the sure gamble here? I think it's
potentially, but it seems like he has plenty of moshing targets and plenty of draw otherwise.
Yeah, I guess that question would have been more interesting if he didn't have an I've had worse also in hand. But
and a 0 on the board, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, moshing actually is a card that showed up in the first list I saw like this, lose Tug to Guts list as a 3 of, just the most explosive way to ensure you found your Apocalypse, and a found an Apocalypse he has. So now you can really set up to try and get that credit differential and push for that board wipe, putting Binary Dogs back to turn 1. And we do have a ping. That's another interesting ice to maybe put on central servers to ensure that if you go for the Apocalypse, you're going to end with the 2 tags, because 2 tags, if you look slightly to the left, that's boom. That's 7 meat damage. Now, even if you trash that from hand, the Archive Memories is going to have something to say about that. Yeah, looking at the heap, yeah, so far we've only access to a Paperclip and MK Ultra. We haven't seen the Black Orchestra so far. Centrals as an F2P, which honestly you can let fire it in some extent. I guess it's a bit difficult. You don't want to take 2 tags for sure. An IP block and a Turnpike. Binary pushing out another agenda.
We're almost at the point where I wonder if it's not worth it to APOC anymore, because with the MVT on HQ and everything iced, it's going to be a very expensive APOC to not end up tagged on. And there's not a whole lot he has on the board that's as scary as I almost wonder if Jonas just like contests the board instead of trying to APOC now.
Yeah, it does seem like maybe he could contest the res bankers, and then next turn potentially will contest the next to be res bankers, though he could probably also check servers 8 and 9 here. At some point, you might want to kill the DBS, but I think also as Lou, you're kind of happy to just, the game is sort of frozen here with CTM being unable to actually make that much forward progress, and will eventually, they'll DBS so much that they'll only have agendas to put into HQ.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll ride it out. But yeah, that daily business show, mind you, we know it's on top of a Mumbed virtual tour, and that can be an expensive trash, but that will eventually eclipse Jonas's money if that's not dealt with sooner than later, especially with a second on the board. But that one won't last for long, I have no doubt. Does this list have, I don't have the list open right now, but does Jonas's deck have a single rebirth? Or would we see something like a freedom pull if we really needed to?
The correct choice on the Wildcat strike there.
Wildcat gains 6 credits. Yeah, we're never letting anyone draw with that.
Someone did in one of the other Fight Night matches, and I almost pulled a handbrake on the whole review to just talk about how bad of a choice it was. And it was one of those things where they gave their opponent 4 cards, and it was the only 4 cards in the deck that didn't immediately win the run of the game.
Oh no.
So
yeah, you don't see the card draw that often. And there you go, big unit pushing himself to nearly 30 credits. We get that second commercial bankers group up. That is 6 credits coming in, 7 with this Pat campaign at the top of the turn. I don't think we have a NASX or anything to really explode off here, but a second AR enhanced security, just like you're saying, it is almost impossible at this point, nearly impossible to APOC and not stick the boom.
Yeah, so I think probably as Jonas here, I would be looking to clear these two commercial bankers groups probably this turn, because you still have a big enough money cushion that you should be able to do that, clear tags, and be still close in money at the end of the full sequence. And then you're sort of challenging binary dogs to come up with anything on the board that you have to care about. And maybe a Rebirth into Freedom just to deal with the Mumbed virtual tours is not the worst call here, because it's really they're the cards that you care about here, less so than whatever ice is going to be on Archives, R&D, or HQ. The only one you'd be worried about, I think, would be the toll booth. Everything else you can get through relatively cheaply, or by just paying credits.
Yeah, the Rebirth, if it comes up, is such an interesting option, because sometimes you'll see people want to snap go into Edward Kim because there's a lot of operations in hand, but with double AR enhanced security, mind you, it doesn't care if the card is installed. So if you run, HQ and trash an operation, it's not your choice, mind you, with Edward Kim. You take 2 tags on the spot. It makes it really hard to run central servers. So Edward, yeah, just like you said, Freedom at 0, even with no virus support, at least saves you 5 credits per Mamba virtual tour, lets you contest spin doctors, lets you trash an exchange of information. You still have to deal with the 2 tags though, but Jonas has a lot of options here. Finally finding their decoder. They do have the Apocalypse in hand and a lot of money to their name, so there's calculations here. Would you want to slam centrals where there's no Mamba virtual tours, or excuse me, Mamba temples? Looks like we're poking here into HQ, F2P unresed. Single access here on HQ, followed in by a Mumbed virtual tour, finding the hard-hitting news, understanding the threat, trashing the virtual tour, taking 2 tags from AR enhanced security, drawing a card, and gaining a credit from lose ability, finding the second Black Orchestra in hand. So this is, they don't have a Deuces Wild, right? Like they have to full tags. Oh, they do have a Deuces.
So
that was
they
a
were
Deuces.
using that was with a Deuces.
Oh,
run, yeah.
sick.
Right. Is he trying to APOC here?
Yeah, for sure, right?
Maybe. At this, now that you've run HQ.
Yeah, this is an APOC run.
Or Archives. Yeah, this is definitely, and as this makes a lot more sense. I wouldn't be the play I would have gone for, but it makes a ton of sense in retrospect that you can use the Mumbed virtual tour, clear some tags with the Deuces, and then you'll still get in. And he paid through the CTM trace, so he's not going to get any more tags this turn.
Yeah, floating 1 tag is totally fine.
Oh,
interestingly enough, yeah, paying 4 for that instead of just tracing through, forcing binary dogs
because he has 1 tag, so he can't just trace.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. And there's the Apocalypse, ran all 3 servers successfully, central servers, mind you, and the board has been wiped. A single tag means that Boom, which isn't even in hand at this point, has been put back to the bottom of the deck with a daily business show, is putting binary dogs in a really awkward spot, having to rebuild their entire game plan. And Jonas still has access to both 0, a sure gamble in hand.
Oh, I missed that the Boom went back on the bottom. I assumed it had just gotten discarded because with the archive memories, that's the better place to go. But with it on the bottom of R&D somewhere, Jonas has a lot of time to rebuild his board state, even though he's going to get hard-hitting news here and go up to 5 tags, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Now, we do have access to exchange of information. Not very powerful. A lot of times you want to do that for a 3-pointer. Getting rid of your second AR enhanced security, it has a relevant ability at this point. And you're not very close to scoring agendas. I don't know if you want to pop that right now. But the hard-hitting news definitely could fly.
This is a very interesting spot for Jonas, because I'm sure he assumes that Binary Dogs has the Boom, or some access to it after having 2 daily business shows for 11 turns-ish, give or take. So he's going to get hard-hitting news, possibly.
Yeah, I think Binary's just figuring out what to do with the rest of the turn. Now, you could always just do credit into IP block. I don't have the list open, excuse me, but does Jonas have any punishment for this turn? Is there a single Stargate in the list, something that could potentially represent a close to the game?
There is one Stargate.
Okay, and there's 2 pawn shops we haven't seen so far, so even these cards on the table will be returned. Oh, 1 pawn shop, sorry, hit the bin already.
Yeah.
So IP block is going to end access to R&D there. The tag does end the run. And we're going to have a trace 6 on the hard-hitting news. That's 4 tags that Jonas is going to have to eat here. And 3 credits for binary dogs means, in theory, and we know it won't happen anytime soon, but credit into Boom is a threat that Jonas will be playing around, not knowing exactly where the Boom is on this board state.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Jonas, you just have to say once again, you don't have it, and gamble, clear 3 tags, and cross your fingers that you don't lose.
Yeah.
The other possibility is he runs HQ, which is going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, not enough to close the game. I think at that point you would exchange the Bologna for the AI
Right.
Ants for sure. I don't think we've seen the Archives memories in hand, because it's worth noting for those who don't know, Boom is a trashable operation. There's very few of those in the game. So if Big Unit just wants to say, I'm going to hit this on HQ, I'm going to smash HQ, and go for the Boom trash again, as soon as you see the Archive memories, you might want to rethink that plan. At least it buys you a turn.
I think Jonas also very much does not want to access agendas right now, so.
Yeah. We're going in. Exchange in hand. Good to know where the tag punishment is. There's only 2 cards, if I'm not mistaken. Does this list have a psychographics even?
Yes, I believe it has
did.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got one of all of the tag punishment: 1 psycho, 1 exchange, and 1 boom. Yeah, it's interesting how different which tag punishment cards each group brought to their CTM.
Yeah, they're wildly different.
I am a big fan. I think you basically have to be running Boom. I think otherwise, like, Max just doesn't have to respect you at all.
Yeah, I agree. The tag punishes like psychographics, for example. The runner is often in a position where they can just control your board state by going tag me to the point where you don't have the econ to play it. Oh, that's interesting.
Yo, Zero
Citadel
coming
Sanctuary.
down, hitting the iPad Warriors, drawing 5 cards, giving you 1 credit. Such immense value. And that Citadel is a 1 of in the deck, if I'm not mistaken. Without
Yep.
Link, it doesn't. You still are going to pay to clear those tags. At least it's clicklessly, but it is technically meat prevention in a pinch that the Corp will have to deal with before throwing the book at you, or more accurately, the rocket.
It means that Binary Dogs needs 6 credit, Boom in hand to kill.
Yeah, and it slows down Archive memories turns as well if you need an Archive for Boom for some reason.
Exactly.
There is
He
now
needs to have a Boom in hand.
7 points in HQ. Mind you,
Yikes.
behind no ice, you are going to need 10 credits to steal those if you nail them perfectly, but game point is definitely still in HQ, and Binary doesn't have anything to jam on the table. Like, basically any other asset you would confidently jam out. Anything you'd put out there. A pad campaign, you don't care. But these are specifically quite awkward.
I mean, do you just click for 3 and tell Jonas you have to clear this? You actually do have to clear this time, or I will kill you next turn.
Yeah, I wonder.
You may just to stop him from running HQ, because this looks very flooded from Jonas's point of view. Like the no installs, the no facing anything. Like this is telegraphing that you're holding agendas. You can't do anything.
The stall is
that's true.
It's such a hard thing to play around, where you draw a horrible hand and you just have to take time to figure out, which I think maybe you need to spend time preempting before your turn starts. If I draw an agenda, what do I do? So you can commit to it, so you don't have this horrible tell. Because this looks hella awkward for both players.
Yeah, I mean, this super long pause should be a fairly easy read that
something's not right.
There's a couple of points in HQ here, and that's probably part of why Jonas ran HQ a little bit last turn as well. But
something that is interesting here is I don't think this has actually been a spectacularly bad draw. It's like we're halfway through the deck. There's about 11 points visible in the game.
Yeah.
It's just that playing against an APOC deck has slowed you down and prevented you from being able to jam things into remotes and prevented you from scoring things. So all the agendas start to stack up in HQ. Oof.
I think this is also,
no.
We might just be breaking DBS, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, we did Jackson as Spin Doctor, excuse me, at some point. But so this is not entirely.
Okay, this is
getting worse.
Yeah, this is getting worse.
Yeah, I think your point was great, Kat, up until the point where you draw the third bullet.
Yeah, well, okay, now he's trending a bit into bad luck.
Yeah, but it's but it also is worth pointing out. Yeah, DBS has been doing it was 2 DBS as a turn firing for a long time, so there is going to be a fairly high agenda density now in R&D, because only 3 agendas are in score areas of the 10 agendas in the deck. So yeah, there's going to be 7 spread across the remaining half of the deck, and that's a pretty high density relative to the start of the game.
So FTP being drawn into for second click, while you can strap it onto HQ if you really want to, it kind of shows that something bad is in there, let alone you can't afford it. But funny enough, that add one installed runner card to the grip, you have to start picking the face down cards, and you have no idea which one is which. It is a full shell game here.
Beneficial to the runner.
It's not a good look.
That I don't know the competitive rules on this. I have always, if someone has fired an F2P and all my cards are face down, I've always just let them know which one was which, assuming that was what the competitive rules told me.
I honestly don't know, but I think that's a nice thing to do for sure.
But also that, yeah.
The Earthrise, mind you, is marked. You got to pay attention when you Apocalypse to keep your counters. But Binary Dogs has such an awkward turn here now. You could always put the Bologna on the table, mind you. The exchange of information will be very relevant for like the next couple turns. Unit's not going to be able to clear all 4 tags, even with the Citadel, or all 5 tags, excuse me, even with the Citadel.
Are there any one-link runners you can rebirth, Anarchs you can rebirth into?
Yeah, you got Reyna at least. Kim has a link.
Yeah, I guess maybe you could justify rebirthing into Kim, though I think Freedom is still better, even with 0 viruses in your deck.
Throwing the 1-pointer out into Archives, holding 9 points very bravely in their hand. Looks like they're just setting up for a remote server next turn. Not that this card ends the run in any meaningful way. But how is Jonas going to read all this information? That turn took 5 minutes. I believe our first game was slower than the entire turn. So something is afoot here.
Yeah. I also, so Binary Dog still is at 3 credits, so has to the only threat of booming here is click for a credit, play the boom.
Yeah.
So Jonas can pretty confidently just put down the Citadel Sanctuary and let 1 tag per turn float away. He's going to pay in instead.
That's interesting. That means they're definitely committing to clear all tags before the game is over. Because like you're right, if you install the Citadel, you could just like slowly slough off the tags. Oh, this draw is not getting any better anytime soon, huh?
That's awkward. I mean, I guess you have to.
I think you install the Bologna in server 10 and just click for 2 credits, maybe.
Because they're nowhere near stealing the Bologna, and you're not on your own side, you're not close to scoring it. Regardless, you do have a psychographic set. Again, if we assume we've seen what we've seen with DBS, it's probably in the next 5 cards. Maybe we saw it off the psychographics. Off the Daily Business Show. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Archive pulling in. Oh, a commercial bankers group. That was
spicy.
Always a play that was available last turn to get something cooking, and we do have the Bologna in the remote server.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's different about doing that this turn rather than last turn is that Jonas doesn't have that much money anymore, so we'd be sitting on a lot more tags if we went to clear out the bankers group this turn.
Yeah. There is also, it is like, oh, excuse me. I was going to say there's some bluffing. You can archive memories and install a different card. So in theory, commercial bankers group could be something like a Beal. You're pretty sure the commercial banker group isn't in the remote server since it doesn't do anything with ice, but we'll see if Jonas wants to run it, because if he runs that, that's 2 more tags. Kind of undoes everything he did last turn.
Yeah, I think this play makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
This is a safer play.
Citadel clearing that tag for a single credit, a Spin Doctor just in time there. You can actually save a bunch of agendas from hand. Not pre-installing Bologna, jamming on top of it. So we're going to have to commit to overdrawing this turn if you want to clear your hand. A ping is nice with only 1 credit. We have 1 paperclip in the bin, 1 locked face down from the rubble left behind by the Apocalypse.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. So disperse. There's only someone's asking in chat. So this this is on 3 Hardening News.
There's only 1.
There's only 1 in Archives though. Yeah, 1, and then but this is if there've been 2 played. 1 of them has been shuffled back with a Spin Doctor, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's interesting. This, despite the agenda flood, I think this board state has actually turned around with the bankers play and Jonas going so low. There's a window here for Binary Dogs to sort of get ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. They found a window and they clawed out of it because the tides are changing. If you look at Unit's hand, like you might just see at this point an aggressive Liberites to get in like Deuces Wild, something that's playable on this econ level. You do have perfect information on the next 3 cards you're going to trash, which might be awkward. I don't actually know. We could math it out and figure out what's at the bottom of the deck.
One is an APOC, one is an ASOPs, both of which you definitely.
Yeah, that Aesop's is looking
Uh,
nice.
So one of the cards is an Aesop's, but there's only 2 Apocalypses in this
Oh,
list. So it's
my bad.
oh no, yeah.
Not APOC.
I think it's a
It's
third
one
Deuces, maybe?
Stargate
Oh,
and
there's a Stargate.
so it's Stargate, Deuces, and oh shoot, I had the other card right at the tip of my brain, and now it's gone.
I think there's 2
But-
more, actually. We're on 4, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm right. So Stargate, Deuces, an Aesop's Pawn Shop.
Oh, Mama Virtual Tour on top of the Bologna. Now, the order of access here is actually really interesting. The card that was in server 10 before hadn't... Oh, it's a Rebirth, right.
Oh, Rebirth.
Nothing happened here before. Do you just... I don't know if you're going to just Rebirth into Omar and get those free accesses. Again, HQ is where it's at, and I feel like the unit might be able to sniff that out. It's been so many turns, and no agendas have been scored.
I think the Aesop's is actually basically enough to keep you up with CTM now.
Yeah.
Because it's 3 credits per turn for both of you for a while, and then you'll have the ability to go and access the bankers later.
And the Citadel is such a big deal, right? Like spending a click and 2 credits to remove a tag, or spending 4 on the trace, as opposed to, clicklessly spending 1 as long as you have a credit lead over the corp, is a huge deal if you want to contest your board. Honestly, now admittedly 2 AR and security makes that tricky. Pawn shop coming down, it is a connection, so you're not going to be able to save money off Paladin Puemo, unfortunately.
Oh wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I just sort of was like, assumed that he had taken the credit. But next turn it's fine. He'll sell a card and then get 3 credits off on installing a Liberated. He can click it up, and
He will be back in the 8th game for sure.
Yeah, the window will basically be closed, or it'll be close again for Binary Dogs.
And Binary has to figure out how to muster 2 more credits to put on the Bologna. And as soon as the money hits the Bologna, like you have perfect information, hit the Bologna first, spend 5, duck the MVT, right? Like there's so much signaling once those advancement counters hit that card.
Yeah, it does make you wish that NBA, like you almost want a 1x reversed accounts in the list, not because you ever want to use it for that, but just because you want the threat of that.
This is interesting. He burned the Spin Doctor, but not to clear any of the agendas.
Yeah, burned it just before the mandatory draw, right? Shuffling in archives that are hard hitting to get more threats on the table. It also does shuffle if there was a DBS ordering that, Binary Dogs might have remembered. Mind you can note take, right? You can actually map out what's on the bottom of your deck.
Oof, remind me to never play CTM. That's too much thinking for me.
Sansan City Grid is a win condition. In theory, you're going to have to get all the Beals and the Tomorrow's Headline, which is a lot of work. We have a second. That's a ping into an FTP now. Those 2 ice do work well together. And double advance.
Scoring the Bologna here is really big for Binary Dogs, because then if Jonas ever ends with a single tag, that's the end of the game. Because exchange of information will be enough. Because
I think it'll be 6,
right?
No,
oh no, it's only
6,
1.
Yeah. But you're right, though.
Right.
It puts him on game point. And so the Sansan City Grid in the remote has to be dealt with as well. If he's floating, 8 credits, you can do the Beal into the Sansan. This game is seesawing back and forth. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is also, though, like if Jonas just gets to 10 credits and runs HQ twice, the game can also just end immediately. Yeah. So it's a very odd board state.
The unit also still is on that Rebirth. A lot of options here. There is still some small chance that Quetzal can be the right call if you want to respect things like ping, like IP block. Sometimes in a pinch that's necessary. We're going to see an Aesop's Pawn Shop hitting the paperclip, so 2 paperclips in the bin. For only 3 credits, Paladin Puemo saving on the liberated account, so money's not going to be too big of a problem. The issue is that Bologna in the remote server is going to be scored for free largely. Only the time you get that 5 credit refund. Sorry, y'all. Do you mind for a second? Nanako, my cat here, it's her dinner time, and she is losing her mind.
Yeah, sure. We can
I'll
take
be right
over
back.
for a minute. All right. So yeah, Binary Dogs gets the score. I guess you discard the exchange here, I would think. Okay, so Sansan City Grid just saying I'm not going to win by fast advancing a Beal. I'm going to commit to scoring the Bolognas, which are better at self-protecting in this sort of economic race. Though I do feel like Jonas here is fine to hit HQ a couple of times and potentially just win the game.
Yeah.
Right. This is a good turn to to do some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think so. There's not a whole lot running HQ can do that won't hurt you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the Beal, and
Yep.
very
Jonas
50-50
knows
to
where
win
the
the game
agendas
on
are.
this access, and there
Yep.
it is. Yeah.
Correct. Well, that's
Yeah.
Jonas is 2-0 now, so
2-0. Let's go Snare Bears. Yeah, I mean, I think this was a very interesting game, and you can kind of
yeah.
see why CTM has not been taking as many top tables lately, as
Mhm.
the Apocalypse matchup is really hard. It's hard to make your tags relevant enough against a
Yeah.
deck that is happy to wipe your board state and can include a little bit of nice incidental tech like Citadel or Deuce's
Right.
Wild.
Yeah, it's just very difficult right now, I think, for CTM to make tags relevant enough to win you the game. Like without closed accounts, you can float one tag pretty easily as long as you don't have too many agendas for. Like, it's just very hard for CTM to punish your mistakes now.
Yeah, it's amazing how like just one card leaving, and not a card that like it was a one of in all the decks it was played, and it was, sort of a card that you didn't think about too often, and just sort of collapsed a lot of the power that was in the CTM decks. Along with some changes to the runner meta and how the runner economy sort of moved about between gateway
Runner
and pre-gateway.
Runner Econ is extremely strong right now, so it's just kind of difficult for CTM to make enough of an impact with its ability.
Well, that's why we gotta get Asmari back, I guess.
I mean, I'm all for Asmari to come back.
I would like to have a chance the next time we meet each other in a tournament, so I'd love Asmari to not come back.
You just have to not. You have to just finish your turn with more than one card in hand. Then I can't see source high profile target.
Yeah, well, it felt like the right line at the time in the game. I felt like I had lost anyway. So, but yeah, no, that was a fun game.
Yo, everyone is.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Everyone's now well fed. I think I picked the worst possible timing for that. I take it that Jonas figured out HQ is good.
You did.
Hey.
Yeah, Jonas made the 16 credits, said, "All right, let's see what's going on in this HQ," and ripped it off of the first two accesses. So
that'll do it. So for those who are just tuning in, welcome to Fite Nite 2021. We are 2 games in, and right now the Big Unit 3000, otherwise known as Jonas, is undefeated. I believe that means he'll be swapping back to the first deck we saw today, which is a hard-hitting news Asa group, which we saw do really cool things. And now the players on the process, the UK, are going to have to figure out which of their runner decks is best suited to maybe bring down this Asa group. What do y'all think would have a matchup here? Mind you, Tau is now out. Lou is now out, so it's either between Virus Max or 419. I think what we assume is the 2 tier 1 decks at this moment, the at least slightly higher above than everything else.
I would probably take the 419. I think it's going to have a more straightforward to pilot matchup. The big power in Max is doing big R&D digs and winning immediately, and Vacheron, which is 9 of the points in the Asa deck, says, "Oh no, hold on, you got to wait 4 turns. You got to earn those agendas." So I would probably look at doing 419, even though it's not the most economically heavy 419 list that you could make. It's still got, the standard crim. Oh yeah, let me just play 3 bravados, 3 dirty laundries, 3 short gambles, penny shavers, and just sort of make money.
I think we actually have confirmation that it is the 419 that's going to be up. Mike is going to be up next. So it's 419 versus, I'm going to just pull up the deck list. 1 second.
So the thing that makes me nervous about this 419 deck is it has 0 misbones.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to pay real money for all of the assets, and that's going to be rough.
Yeah, and that is, that as an Asa player, I'm always excited that my criminal opponent doesn't have misbones. That felt like the biggest card when people started teching for including 2 to 3 miscopies of misbones in their decks last year. I started seeing my win rates drop precipitously.
Yeah, that's surprising. There's also Hunting Grounds on this list, which is nothing that's going to be relevant in this matchup. I reckon, Amakua is a thing, so the IP blocks. I think that's the only thing we've seen so far. I think that's the only one in the whole format right now, right?
Yeah, that one looked a little bit. The hunting ground, or yeah, it's the hunting grounds look a little bit strange to me when I saw that in their list, because it's a narrow tech card, and it's basically you're trading one card slot and one influence for just dealing with the IP block, which seems kind of, it's quite narrow.
Yeah.
All things considered. So.
Yeah. That being said, the
So-
Amakua just helps so much in that CTM matchup where those tokens can be so generously just given out.
So unfortunately, I've been commentating on my lunch break, and I'm kind of done with my lunch break, so I gotta go. But good luck with the rest of the commentary, and yeah.
Thanks so much
Thanks
for joining us. It's an absolute treat. Enjoy the rest of your day, huh?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we have 2 rounds left right now. The 4-0 sweep, which is some people in the chat are really, really pushing here on the Snare Bears. They have a chance.
It's, as much as I root for the Snare Bears, I would love to see other deck, not just the Jonas show. But it is also really cool to see the people go on the big runs. I have recorded but not edited a video about Chris Ferg's run in the back half of the Snare Bears versus NWE versus the Process, and that was it was cool to see this player just play really well and consistently and get it fair. Not going to say how the final game ends up, but makes the match go the distance.
So here we are. We have Asa Group, an absolute menace in the competitive field for the last years, giving you that double install, that economy, or that click compression, excuse me, which lines up so well with fully operational. And 419 is back. It kind of left a bit last year, replaced by Leela, but this ability to force credits out of the corporation, slow them down on top of all the other good criminal economy and criminal econ denial. And money's a big thing in this game. We don't have a hard-hitting news in opening hand. We do have a boom. We have some ice here. I think always you want to ice up HQ to avoid the diversion of funds turn 1 unless you can really duck it by rezzing a lot of stuff. We'll see if we just get a vanilla, but no. Oh, actually, we do have 1 click left. There you go. Vanilla HQ.
Yep. I mean, so Jonas had a very slow start, but getting 2 vanillas is basically, does a lot of work to make up for that. Jonas knows that there's only 1 falsified credentials in the list, so he doesn't have to res all of his assets early. Against good players, often once you played a single falsified credentials, they would then just res all of the assets that they could in advance, so you just had 3 blank cards in your deck.
Yeah.
But, in this sort of scenario, it's, as Asa, you don't want to do that just yet because you're so econ starved.
And there's so many aggressive options here. It's worth noting that this is the second time that Jonas has paid credits to avoid the 419 tax on the expose. And the expose is doubly important. Not only does it give you information, which is really important if you're running a remote server, knowing where to spend your boomerangs, but on top of it, if the Amakua is on the table, that starts to generate counters. Getting an Amakua down early really incentivizes the corp to lose a credit a turn. Now we have a dirty launching straight into R&D.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about 419 that I've been thinking, it's like, basically, 419's ability says the corp has to pay 1 credit to play the game they would otherwise normally play.
Yeah.
And that sort of explains why we see 419 over basically every other criminal ID. Leela having a breakout at the end of last year because of how sort of combo-y I think a lot of the top tier decks ended up being.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Or just how important it ended up becoming. The little bit of tempo of it's very hard for the corp to score last click and not have their board reset.
So just Amakua down, we're charging into server 2. It's only a white space. So if Jonas wants to spend almost all their money rezzing this, you'll get through that for only 1 credit, mind you, because you do have more than 6 credits. So not a great res.
It's an interesting thing to think about here as MJP, because that of the 14 ice in the list, 5 of them are strength 0. Yeah. So it's actually not unreasonable to say, oh, there's a 40% chance that the ice here, I don't care, I can break if I need to.
It's only being rezzed. Oh, not even going through to get an Amakua counter. I think you definitely want to go through there. They did break the lose 3 credits. You could have gone through for free to get an Amakua counter, but MGP just deciding to lose the credits and bounce off of that for some reason. We have
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I think that is just I think he just thought that there was a hard end to run on the back because white space is relatively new, and
yeah, for
sometimes
sure.
if you're just in autopilot, you're like, oh, this is basically an enigma, but it costs 3 credits instead of costing a click. So I want to pay 1 credit to get in and get the Amakua counter. But yeah, obviously that would be a better line.
Stealing of Vitruvius there off the top, not getting an Amakua counter, but you're pretty okay with 2 points. A lot of times you want to find those early Vacherons. And on 3 credits, we are going to end up rezzing for free that vanilla, going through again for 1 credit, having 2 agendas in HQ, just finding the drafter in the middle. I think any of the other cards largely in the hand are much more interesting. We're hitting the drafter now on server 4, which if Jonas wants to res it, that's all his money. Now this lets you
Yeah, it's
return cards from
interesting
archives,
because
but there's nothing.
there's
in
nothing in
archives.
archives, so it's just to get the install down.
But the install also gives an
Um,
Amakua counter because you can't afford to overpay. You don't have the credits to dodge.
That's true, but I think you can just install the IP block on HQ and be very content.
Oh yeah, ignoring all costs, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there's only a
Um,
Maryland in there. Now MJP might want to trash that. Denying the economy is definitely really important. There also is a last click of chance that they'll hit the first Maryland in server 1, force that shuffle, get that money down because there's no economy coming in next turn. They'll probably see something like click for 3 credits with Jeeves and then maybe go for a double install.
mhm.
Yeah, this is a really awkward drafter.
Oh, okay. It's installing over the Jeeves. I guess threatening is another vanilla and saying MJP doesn't want to. Oh, actually, no. So the reason you do that is so that if you draw the fully operational here,
Yeah, it's
you
more
can get
value.
more value out of it. Yeah. So I'm actually a little surprised that MJP didn't go for that res Maryland, but did trash the unresed one.
Yeah, it stops the shuffle back, which is nice, but I think denying economy is really important. Maybe with a diversion of funds in hand, you're okay with some money coming in because there's not a lot of good ways to offshore that econ. So once that Maryland finishes, that diversion of funds is going to slam straight through the vanilla.
Yeah, but as Jonas here, that Rashida is beautiful because you can install that in server 4, pay 1 credit to avoid the 419 tax, and if he runs through the drafter again, you're pretty happy. But instead, he's going to take 3 draws to get the Jeeves value and install.
IP blocks,
Keep going out
perfect.
horizontally because he knows that there's no apocalypse threat here, so he can go pretty wide and be pretty happy with that.
So straight into the IP block. This is actually resable, only on 1 credit, but you do have 2 on the Mamba Temple. So we're going through here. This will land a tag, which MJP doesn't really need to trash this turn or clear this turn, but they won't be going through that IP block for sure. I think they do have a paperclip in the bin, actually. They could spend what ends up being 7 credits, but that seems like a heck of a lot right now.
Yeah, that's very risky because Jonas is on Hard Hitting News, and we happen to know it is in hand along with the Boom in Archives. Now, admittedly, with no archive memory, so it's not a huge threat just yet. But so going very low is very risky, and especially because Jonas would have had enough even without the Rashida firing to play the Boom if stuff was lingering around. But now I think as Jonas, you got to decide where you want to put the Luminal, or maybe you just throw down, the Spin Doctor, 2 other and then 3 assets, something like that, and maybe even Spin Doctor to get the Vacherons into R&D, something like that.
How scared are you this turn of a diversion? Right, like 6 credits, nowhere to offshore it. Like, is it in your interest just to dump a bunch of assets just so you have something to offshore if the diversion comes in? Now MGP hasn't been drawing a lot. We have 1 class act trigger, maybe 2, but we do have what we need in hand. That's actually a really good hand for pressuring. We have the Bravado for economy, the Boomerang if they double ice remote and you're really threatened. Maybe you're scared of a Gatekeeper in the early game.
Yeah, Gatekeeper in the early game is sort of the blowout ice for this particular version of ASA is the IP block, the Gatekeepers, and the drafters. You've already found 1 drafter, and you face checked it at the least painful time to check it when there's nothing in archives. And you've found 1 of the IP blocks. So there's not that much ice that's really scary. Gatekeeper is a big deal, but you also have a lot of options to just like Bravado HQ, just get a little bit of information about what Jonas has in hand.
Yeah.
You'll get a big economic lead from doing something like that. And you can still set up diversion. I think as Jonas, you do want to set up some assets to offshore. You can do something like, I'll put the Nico behind the drafter. You could have easily done it behind the IP block. But I think it's, you install all of your econ assets. I would probably then install the Spin Doctor as my last thing, so I can then overdraw a little bit and recur if needed.
So we got 4 installs coming down. The white space outside of HQ. It's so interesting to see this card. Unfortunately, it lines up very poorly against Amakua. 2 credits at worst. Sometimes only 1 credit to get through. MJP has that tag.
But the thing is, MJP has to respect that being a gatekeeper. And that's the really interesting thing about it. That's part of why Asa has even when Criminal is on 3 missed bones, Asa can still have a really good matchup against Criminal because Gatekeeper lines up so poorly with Amina, where the Criminal is like, oh, I can't really run until I either get 6 Amakua counters or spend 7 credits to install my Code Gate Breaker for a 3 credit piece of ice. And that's such a big differential. It can buy Asa a whole lot of game. And I think that's why we're seeing MJP. If MJP could see what we could see, I think they would be slamming that Bravado in HQ and slamming the diversions in HQ, trashing all these economic assets. But you just don't have that information as the runner here.
And we're so close to a huge swing turn. Even if MJP goes for a casual single access on R&D, I'm not even sure that that's the right thing to do. But big unit is either mandatory draw or a Spin Doctor away from a fully operational that echoes 5 more times, like 12 credits potentially into hard hitting news. It's an absolute reversal of economy. But there we got everything rezzed. Nico, Maryland, all being rezzed. One being rezzed for free at least with Mumba, putting you credit positive there.
Yeah, I mean, so it's plus 3 credits this turn, and it's going to be just massively, it's plus another 7 next turn just for sitting around.
Yeah. I think you need a Bravado down that Temple. That Temple has given Jonas 6 to 8 credits by this turn. Maybe I'm overestimating a bit, but just an immense amount. We just have a Rashida naked. After a purge, mind you, purge so good with Jeeves model Byroid. Spending 3 clicks to purge all virus counters gives you an extra click. So just Rashida in remote server, no ice to choose, or maybe just no ice to protect that.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, you're okay with MJP running and trashing the Rashida because you're forcing the run to get in hard hitting news range, and your economy is going to tick along much nicer here than MJP is, which is all run based. And so MJP has to be a little bit cautious with this. Now, we do see the Rozeki, and that is non-run based econ, but it feels a little slow. This Rashida getting off is going to be a really big deal, most likely.
There it is, off the top of the turn. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 credits, 3 more with the Rashida, and this fully operational. Could even get another trigger before it goes off if you want to bury an agenda behind a drafter, let alone just any asset would be fine. And at this point, it's really hard for MGP to interact. I think it's going to be on unit to start jamming out, to start pushing in some way to close the game.
I would look at something like maybe install the Luminal behind the drafter, even though the drafter doesn't hard end the run. You can do all sorts of tricks with it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to actually shuffle
that's nicer.
Install the IP block. I think that, or over the Maryland, I think that makes sense because you're going to get a lot of money off of the fully operational.
And then the drafter in front of it. That stops a single boomerang from contesting the remote server.
Yeah, and now you can fully opt to draw for an additional piece of ice, and then you can draw once or twice to get some extra cards.
You don't want to just hit the 12 credit button? You just want to hit the nice 12 credits. Another Mamba Temple. Ooh, and in the third install, Jeeves doing so much work, sending a second Jeeves out there. And we are not even fully opening, holding it in hand as a surprise. But at this point, we've drawn through more than half the deck, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a Spin Doctor into Jeeves, into Mumba. MJP clearing the tag, gaining 3 credits, just getting a value Deuces Wild instead of using it to get counters off the Amakua. Penny Shaver coming down, and big unit definitely has there. The Luminal Transubstantiation scored with Jeeves gives you 4 clicks. More than a turn.
And 3 fully operationals in hand here is just wild.
House. Nico, mind you, ending and giving you a card draw after it triggers its last 3 credit gains. You definitely score out here, and then probably set up for the Ikawa.
So I think probably what Jones is thinking about is how do I convert this into a win here? He's got the really strong board state. Now you have to figure out what your scoring plan is going to be past the Luminal.
Yeah, with real 3-pointers, it's a bit difficult, right? Like at this point, you could jam an agenda, and sure, if MGP manages to get in through some criminal tricks, you still can bury them with tags or at least slow them down. And it's hard with 3-pointers. Mind you, Vacheron doesn't interact with this game the way that a lot of other 3-pointers do. It's not a real 3-pointer for most of the game, so definitely a safe jam here, but we're opening up with the Spin Doctor to give more options.
Yeah, I like opening the Spin Doctor just to have a sense of what am I going to be able to install with the agenda I put down on server 5, presumably. But
hitting them fully operational before scoring the Luminal, just getting to 3. I hope Jonas remembers to score this agenda out.
Yeah, I mean, so this is getting just the Gatekeeper. That's basically all you need. And I think my guess is Jonas is going to take 8 credits here on the rest of the fully ops, because now your turn can look something like score the Luminal, install the Ikoa, and advance it twice with the Gatekeeper on server 5.
Yeah, you're calling it there. Look, that's 10 credits, or sorry, 8 credits flooding in right after. Jonas on 23.
Yeah.
Good Lord is correct.
And this is what happens when Criminal doesn't have Miss Bones. They don't get to contest this board state, and so you just get to roll ahead. I think, if we were seeing Miss Bones as part of the meta, this would look a little different. And actually, as Jonas, you can be even greedier here. You can install the Nico campaign and then advance just a single time.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
With the Jeeves, mind you, even if it does get trashed, you have a second one in server 8, so that it becomes a 4 advance on the Ikoa if you want to score it out. Now, admittedly, you could still advance at once, and then next turn, done triple advance jam into the remote server if you top deck like a 3-2 of some sort, but this is still definitely great.
Yeah, and I don't think Jonas doesn't have, there's only, I think...
Oh, we're bravadoing there. Again, it's only Vacherons, and those might not even be relevant. Jonas has not only the card draw, but the economy in hand to be able to find the last 3-2 to close this game. And we'll see, even if it's like at this point, like that's maybe why you wanted the second advances, right? So you can do advance, hard hitting news, because now Jonas actually has a fork. He can't do both.
That's true. Yeah, but having more, he can probably just go advance, leave it at 4, and then hard hitting news and still be okay. Like it's that strong of a board state. Though that said, Bravado just got MJP a lot of cash.
Yep, up on 12.
And he's in 4 turns, he'll be at 5 points if nothing else changes. So it's sort of, Jonas is on a little bit of a clock here to keep the board going forward.
I didn't realize Jonas discarded the 3rd fully operational. Now, you probably don't need all 3. It looks like an apocalypse run here if I've ever seen one, but we know that's not in the cards. Seeing that boom gives you a sigh of relief. No archive
I actually
memories
think it makes
you think it makes you scarier? Like with the Vitruvius counter coming in, maybe on server 5?
Either the Vitruvius counter or one of Archive Memories that's definitely in the list.
Yeah.
And the fact that Jonas isn't only took 2 draws maybe implies he's got a lot of what he needs. Now we know it's actually because there's a lot of agendas. Potentially maybe instead of taking the last 2 credits on the 8, you could have drawn 2 and then dump some stuff with the Spin Doctor. But I think, MJP has done a very nice job here getting back in the economic game.
Yeah.
This diversion is very nice.
And if you run archives and you see a fully operational there, I think it makes you suspicious. Like, what must be in hand? Like, maybe you can expect 2 hard-hitting news, 1 for the bury, the 2nd for the comeback. But now, finally, the runner is ahead, 14-12, checking server 7, just a Mamba Temple. You can take that if you want, probably leaving it just to get the Amakua counter accessed, but not stolen or trashed. Server 4,
and that gets you the.
Oh, he didn't res this. That is so good. It baits a run here. I love that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that must have been a mistake.
Yeah, maybe it was. We don't know, but it worked out really well.
But it works out very well here, because now you can do something like, well, you get to res the Nico and get credits off of it for free.
Yeah.
I wonder if you purge and install the Vacheron and just know it's going to sit on the table for a couple of turns, but.
Pun intended, you are kind of on the clock. You only have 2 more turns really before the other Vacheron becomes, winnable. So yeah, I think you do need to push forward. There's a big difference obviously between purge and install, at least advance with 2 Jeeves. But yeah, 4 counters is a thing.
I was trying to think maybe it's install, put down the other Gatekeeper or something like that, because I think you actually see the Amina in the bin.
Yeah.
Right.
And he hasn't been drawing, so you just assume that he has something like a boomerang in hand, because MJP has been really stalling out on draw.
Man, yeah, I'd be really tempted to do like purge install the Vashron behind a gatekeeper because it's like going to be basically infinitely safe there.
Yeah, it's boomerang or bust, but you have to nail the install. Like you have to target the right one.
Well, even then, it's because you'll have double gatekeeper on the server.
Like Asa with yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. You'll actually be impenetrable there.
So that's where we're starting, Vashron. We'll see if it's the gatekeeper or the IP block. IP block mind is you can still get through with Amaku at 4. You're just going to take the tag. Paying the credit. So it looks like there's no purge. Fully operational. I think it's going to be install. Hard-hitting.
Ooh, seamless launch is a great draw there.
That's such a good draw.
And the archive memories means that now Jonas can actually just click for like those two cards.
Hard-hitting news.
Exactly. He can credit up hard-hitting news and either way win the game next turn, basically. Either MJP is going to get into server 5 by running twice then to get turtle up to strength, then going through the gatekeeper and stuff like that. Then he won't be able to clear the tag, and then you have archive boom. Or if he doesn't, you can advance 3 times, seamless launch, and score the Vashron off the board. So this is going to be a lot on MJP finding a very narrow line to win this game.
Yeah. Still, mind you, possible. The Vashron's definitely not in their favor, considering that there is game threat here. Doing the math, spending 14, I think, no, that's exactly the amount you need, mind you. 419 does have the link for sure, so you need to overspend there. Now, 5 credits doesn't seem like a lot, but there is 2 Mamba Temples on the table, allowing you to res a bunch of this ice. And with the archive memories, mind you, exactly, there is a fork either way you go.
Yep, and the Nico campaign is going to give Big Jonas 3 more credits on the start of his next turn, so he really doesn't need almost any credits.
You're forced for this. I think you're forced to do diversion run server 4.
Except, diversion run server 4 is your out here. That's a very nice play by MJP. I think the issue with it might be something like archive memories. I'm trying to think if there's like an archive memories fully op play that
you just
can still work, but it's just not quite there enough. But you,
yeah.
No,
admittedly, Unit doesn't know. Sorry, MGP doesn't know what's in server 5 because you're right. There is some wild plays there where you do something like archive memories, fully op, seamless launch, get a Jeeves click, advance server 5 if it's a Vitruvius, right?
Or you do something like fully operational and then play the boom as well.
Oh, just running the remote. Yeah, but you need archive for the boom, right? So you add a clicks.
Yeah. It's.
I think my play is also not possible.
Jeeves almost gets you there, but it doesn't quite.
Yeah, because fully up is 1, so you have to start on 1 credit, and that opens up all the possibilities. But we're just going in here, mind you. We do have 2 Mamba Temples. We're on 4 on Amakua, so this Gatekeeper is going to connect if you really wanted to. Being res for free. Draw 3, gain 3. What can this hit you? There's no subliminals. There's no clickless econ here.
Yeah, I mean, you have to res the Gatekeeper, and this is actually unfortunate. You know, that being a diversion of funds, it was the line for MJP.
Yeah.
And does mean that now next turn, he will be able to get in this unless Jonas spends a turn purging, provided MJP goes and trashes the Nico campaign.
Yeah. If MJP doesn't, the game is technically over. That gives you 3 credits. That's advance. Oh, no, you're still short 1. Because you need to do advance, seamless. So it's a 4 credit play.
Oh, you're right. But I think Jonas still has a very nice. I mean, with MJP still sitting on 4 tags, it's going to be hard to avoid the boom. Like you can clear out 3, but that's just not going to do that much for you.
So it's all down to how you use the archive memories, right? Like you could archive memories for credit, and then archive memories fully operational. You'd be back in the econ, but as soon as you do that, the boom is like so far out of reach unless you want to like aggressively spin doctor it back into your deck, which is only 12 cards. So
I think you're actually okay to just.
I think you just click
purge and install the Nico campaign.
Oh yeah, that works too. I was thinking just like click 3 and then literally click 4, which they only have 1 card in hand. The chance that it's the 3rd diversion of funds is like really low. I think that's the only thing that blows you out here. But mind you, yeah, you're right. That remote server is a lot weaker now. I think you do need a purge, just so that the IP blocks do something.
Yeah, maybe that line doesn't quite work though, because you still won't be. That still means you have to protect the Vashron for 2 whole additional turns. But I think, it's okay. Just doing a Jeeves campaign and saying, go back in.
Yeah. So I think they're banking on losing this one, which is fine because after that they can jam the Vitruvius.
Exactly. And something like
Or Boom,
because
of
there's two
course.
because there's two IP blocks on this server 5, and you can res one of the IP blocks for free, and the other one is already resed, MJP just wouldn't have enough tags to clear out the Boom. So then Archive Memories Boom it would be enough.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the list here. We're probably going to see a flatline with one card in hand. MJP mowing into this IP block. Now, you can res that for free. The other option is the Drafter. You definitely want to value the IP block. It is technically another tag, which means it's harder for them to clear
the tag is the relevant text here, not the... everything can be broken. The Drafter, the Gatekeeper. If this is, as much as I was mocking the hunting grounds earlier, it would be a huge deal for MJP right here.
No matter what, yeah, because you're right. They could like clear 3 tags at this point, but there's still another IP block, right?
Yeah, I mean, they would just bounce, I think. But that's actually enough for Big Unit with 4 credits to go and win the game.
Now this is much different because Big Unit, even with 4 credits, right? Like you can score at just about any agenda on this board state, and they can't deny economy again. They could like maybe draw once to see 2 cards with Class Act, and then you have to diversion right off the top there, so it's 2 and 27. Or those numbers are approximate, I reckon.
One thing that's actually I kind of subtle in this game is Penny Shaver of Not Desperado. There's 8 credits in this Penny Shaver, and I don't think it's ever been used.
Yeah, for sure. They just don't have the time to click for it. Click for 9. We're going through though. IP blocks heading a tag. It looks like we're just. I don't know if he broke both subroutines, so that's 2 more for the second IP block.
Yeah.
Well, actually, only breaking 1 on the second one, so going all in there, hitting the Vashron. Now the board, like there isn't. So frustrating. You have 7 points, but no, you actually have 2 points. You're gonna have to wait for those clocks to wind down. And with 7 tags, you're not clearing all of them. And Archive Memories into Boom, you really need to what do? You just have to
draw the top. I think you try and top deck the last diversion of funds here. It's that, or you try and run R&D 3 times and find all of the 2-pointers.
You need the Ikoa and a 2-pointer.
Yeah. You just hit the Ikoa and the 2-pointer, and that's your 3 clicks. So it's choosing between that line and the draw for my diversion and play the diversion.
This deck does have a Citadel, doesn't it? It has 1. That's another top deck that buys you a turn.
Does it?
I think it has 1 Citadel.
Oh yeah, I guess it.
It's the Hunting Grounds. Okay. That was a double draw off Class Act, so that one not doing anything. So we're just going for the option of finding our outs here. Unfortunately, Ikoa does take a click and 2 credits, so MJP has to figure out how to steal 6 points in a turn. And a click.
And that's it.
That is it. Jonas. Archive Memories. Boom. Still undefeated.
That's 3 heads.
3
the process
in a row.
Is not been able to touch this. This was I think actually a quite close game. Jones had some really nice plays, but MJP did some really good recovery, I think, where I had counted him out. And if one of those Vashrons had been an Ico, it's 1 turn away, he's at 5 points, and then if he had stolen an Ikoa or a 2-pointer, the game would look entirely different. So
yeah, it's that frustration always with Vashron, and it's actually a really big deal that Jonas jammed in the remote server the Ikoa, not the Vashron, right? Because that would have made it a lot closer for sure. Keeping the Ikoa in hand as long as possible, I think, is always the right play instead of jamming it, right? Because these things are near worthless if you can close the game quickly.
I think you want to score the Ikoa because it is the one. Yeah, sorry. You score the Ikoa, not the Vashron.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you leave those in hand.
So I think that leaves Nemaya on Near Earth Hub.
We're looking at a world champion that Jonas is going to have to sit down against. This is Near Earth Hub. Yeah, I think that's correct. Let me pull up the list.
Jonas has done quite well at several worlds himself, so I don't think he's too intimidated about this. And this hub list, I think, is a little janky. I think this is sort of we have Precision Design, which we think is, if I was the process, and I'm trying to remember what their thoughts were on the podcast, but from what I remember, it was, we have this Precision Design list we like. We're okay with our CTM list. We'll always play CTM because we love it. And then let's find out what to do with our last 2 decks. And this Near Earth Hub list is a little bit little bit kind of like that.
Yeah, it's so wild. We're seeing this 8 influence of Anoetic Void out of the 17 in Near Earth Hub. And this is not a straight Glacier deck, right? Like, that's the power of Anoetic Void. And Anoetic Void behind an IP block sometimes can be potentially incredibly taxing.
Yeah.
Just on its own.
The challenge here is it is against an Apocalypse deck.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can't build like a one ice remote with Anoetic Void doesn't do anything to Apocalypse. So then you're like, okay, well, I'll put the Anoetic Void on a central. And then the runner's going to turn into Omar and get around the Anoetic Void unless you put it on Archives. And then they're like, click 1 running Archives, and you go, do I have to use Anoetic Void on a click 1 run on Archives just to prevent the potential Apocalypse that could be coming? And that's so expensive, even with Near Earth Hub extra draws.
So you're totally right. There's a huge line of play there, putting Anoetic Void on the central server, right, to stop the Apocalypse. But if you do that, how do you win? Barring like them walking straight into hard hitting news, and there's no like Mumbed virtual tours, there's no traps, there's no surprises, no economic warfare, and we've seen Jonas respect and play around multiple tag per threat turn, multiple threat per turn tag. You know what I mean, right? Like just absolutely nailing that tightrope walk in the last CTM game.
Yeah. And here there's not going to be, there was a lot of pressure in that CTM game from Commercial Bankers Group, and that's not going to be present here.
Yeah, there's nothing explosive.
There's nothing faster than the Maryland Res with a Mumbad Temple. So like basically Jonas can know that the most the corp's ever going to go up is 2 credits in a single turn.
Well, there is that one of Nasex, and it's been a while since we've seen a Nasex explosion on a stream. Now that card technically always threatens something like that. This is not the sort of like Russian NEH list that have things like advanced assembly lines and multiple, triggers that you can fire in the same turn. This one could be ugly, as what's said in chat. Oh no.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I think that Nasex is basically in as a one of, as well, there might be a game state where this is better than Pad Campaign.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, it's just, I would suspect
Pad.
it's just a Pad Campaign with some different and I think quite nice art. But, as Chris here, this looks like a pretty good opening hand. You've got DBS, Rashida, and Maryland, and I would be pretty happy to just spam those out horizontally. And I think, he agrees with me and keeps his opening hand. I think draws into, with only 9 ice in your list, having 2 on turn 1 is a pretty good place to be.
You're talking about starting horizontally, just a bit of a history lesson. This is Near Earth Hub. This deck used to be one of the most competitive NBN decks for a long time back in the day. We're talking, I don't know, at this point, 4 or 5 years ago. And a huge surprise for System Update 2021, this card has unrotated. It has come back into the card pool, representing another really strong option, similar to Controlling the Message. Mind you, it is a bit faster. It does draw you cards when you install new remote servers on your turn or the runners, and 17 influence to boot has always been a bit of a head scratcher. So a very strong identity. We're starting with a Rashida behind a Turnpike. Doesn't end the run, but it's just taxing annoying enough. Looks like it could end the run to the runner and a daily business show. And in theory, you could APOC this turn. I don't know if you want to do that. You want to build for a while, and you do still have to respect, of course, that hard hitting news credit differential. And we're just charging into it.
Wow.
Sure, gamble.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that this list, there is the only hard end the run that you can't pay through is Toll Booth. And the only other one, no, I'm sorry, I'm completely wrong. I'm looking at the wrong list.
I think you got IP blocks, right? You can pay through.
Yeah, you can pay through the IP blocks. You can pay through the Turnpikes, though you don't really, because Trace 5 is just a little bit too expensive. Ooh, that's a nice draw for Jonas there.
Yeah, huge draw for this matchup, getting that soon. You can now float the tags, installing this, and instead of now spending a click and 2 credits to clear tags for the rest of the game, it's just going to be 1 credit clicklessly, assuming, again, you do have the credit differential. Boo, is correct.
Let me see, Chris. I think pretty reasonably upset about one of the best deck cards you could have in this matchup. That's a one of in a 40 card deck.
Yeah, Synchron, I failed to have the deck list open in another window, and at this point I can't fix it. If we want to talk about tag punishment, mind you, what are we looking at? I think it's just Psycho or Exchange. There's no meat damage, right?
Yeah, it's just 1 exchange of information and 1 psychographics and 3 hard-hitting news to actually get the tags to stick.
Right.
But I think there's no pressing reason for Jonas to really respect or even have to run here. He got a Rashida. The odds that there's two Rashidas, I think, is fairly low. And so is instead gonna just say, I'm gonna keep setting up. You have to show me something better than 4 drip per turn for me to start carrying again.
And there you go. Neiman Maya, Chris has a daily business show that Maryland taking through. Now, Amani Sanai is a 3 of in the deck. Might seem like a strange include, but let me tell you how powerful this card is specifically in the meta of Fite Nite. We haven't seen so far today, and mind you, we still could. Neiman Maya could start knocking down some of the players from the Snare Bears, forcing them to play some of their other decks. But the big deck, the reason why this is in is if you haven't seen this card do work against Virus, Hive Mind, Max, it is absolutely so destructive in that matchup.
Yeah, the way people played and didn't play around Amani Sanai in the process versus NWE was basically what broke all of the Hive Mind Max decks. I think they'd been doing pretty well. Oh, sorry about the truck going on.
It's all good, man.
I can't hear anything else, but
we have a Machin coming out from hand. Such an aggressive card draw card. Only a 1 of in this list, but if you need to find a single card in your deck, I'm an Apocalypse deck. This helps you get there, and Econ to boot. So we trashed 3. If I'm not mistaken, it is a Breaker, an MK Ultra, Labor Rights, and an Earthrise Hotel. Seeing an APOC in hand, seeing an Aesop's Pawn Shop. I think at this point you're a bit scared to start zeroing while you have the APOC in hand.
Depends. Yeah, I mean, I would, if I'm Jonas here, what I might think about doing is saying, okay, my next turn, I'm going to install Liberated, click it 3 times.
Yeah.
And then the turn after that, I'm going to Apocalypse because Chris has a board state, but only 1 ice on the central server, and I can just erase this whole board state at very little cost to me. But he's maybe taking, I think, actually, as I talk through the line, he's taking, I think, a slightly smarter thing of just saying, let's make sure that you're not trying to pull a fast one on me. You haven't scored off the board yet. You've drawn a lot. Here we see an Amani Sanai.
Trace
and Jonas knows he's going to get Tenta.
So you want to pay 3 credits to keep your 4 credits on the daily cast. It makes these cards much less profitable. You are probably going to pay into that.
I don't think you do, because actually at this point the daily cast it was click for a credit, so you can just install it again.
Yeah, just get more value. 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you about that. It is the Citadel though instead.
Yeah, and basically you don't want to pay 3 for something that you spend. Like you could maybe pay 3 for the click and 2. But it's not such a crucial card in this matchup that I think you even have to have it installed. It was just very nice to have on that early turn.
Yeah, for sure.
And, Jonas has a fairly notable credit lead here. I'm going to be interested to see what he discards. The 0, I think, does make some sense when you have your 1 of Aesops and your 2 of Apocalypse. I think, it makes a lot of sense.
Daily's business show bottoming the Beals, and looking at this hand right now, an Anoetic Void just coming off the top of the nearest hub draw, but these are not hands you can discard, let alone obviously you want some ice on here, but you don't have the credits or the cards to support this Anoetic Void. Now HQ has been wide open for turns now. Spin Doctor adding a couple more cards into the mix. Hard-hitting news, probably the thing that Chris is the happiest to see at this point, not that the credit differential is there yet.
Yeah, well, he can install the Maryland and new remote and start to be in a nice economic position. A little surprised he doesn't install the Maryland. It seems.
Yeah, I think he wanted to get rid of the Bologna.
You're
probably.
Right. It's actually to discard the Bologna, and that makes a ton of sense when you have a Spin Doctor res on the board. Jonas just say, I'm gonna have 20 credits. What can you do to stop me here?
Res a pad campaign, not a lot of options, but. Mamba flying up for 1, you're going to offshore those 2 credits into your free Jeeves model Byroid. So now Neiman Maya has some options. Install 3 is a lot easier to do in a deck that draws cards while it is mid-installing. 15 minutes,
Unfortunately,
you don't mind to let that go sometimes.
I think, Chris would have loved to have drawn any piece of ice so that you could go something like Ice in Server 1 or, like the Tomorrow's Headline in Server 1, Ice in Server 1, Anoetic Void in Server 1, and then like Maryland in the new remote or something like that. Though the challenge with a line like that is that screams to Jonas, I'll just play APOC.
Run centrals,
Run 3 centrals, land my APOC, and keep going. And so this is a hard board state for Chris for sure.
This is a really big deal now. Chris, again, we have open deck list there, so there's nothing that if you don't run is going to be a really big problem. You said this before, Sengren. There's nothing explosive here, nothing that you have to really deal with. So this allows, you know, Jonas to sit back and just get the credit rate lead, right? Like 4 turns of daily cast, emptying a whole turn worth of liberated accounts. Like that's very click intensive, but it's the best way to use these clicks at this point is just to get the credit lead. We're looking at our first upgrade, our only upgrade in their deck. So we know that if we want to get into that server, you're going to have to run that at least twice, forcing even Maya to spend 4 credits. Now, again, a Spin Doctor potentially on the table could change that math, but it's only a Maryland campaign in server 9.
Yeah, I think as Jonas, you run R&D, click 1 here to see if that's going to be an ice that stops you.
Do you ever threaten the Mamba before you smash into ice just to make the econ a bit rougher?
No, because you want to land the Apocalypse.
Oh, because you're threading. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So IP block.
And so
you trace through that. You don't need a breaker.
Correct. Yeah. And so like that would have to be the 1 Enigma or the 1 Toll Booth for this to matter. And while the Enigma would hurt a little bit, because that would make it actually quite difficult to challenge server 1. In this case, it's, you know, but most of the Toll Booth would be pretty actually devastating for Chris to have to res there. And so now Jonas just gets a nice. Jonas actually has a very well. Okay, no, Spin Doctor's going to save the Archives run. Now that I think about it,
but this is a 6 credit APOC.
Yeah,
like, that's pennies. Keeping
6 credits.
Oh my
doesn't
God.
have to lose any breakers. Like,
yeah,
it's just going to be
forcing
so much
nothing.
value.
Spin Doctor putting a Maryland campaign in that unseen card. We do know it was the Bologna that Chris spent extra effort getting back into R&D. So R&D is now shuffled. But there you go, APOC. We've seen it time and time again. Run 3 central servers, 3 influence, wipe the whole board. That is a long well coming in from Chris. And a hand here again. There are things to jam. It looks a bit better than Binary Dog's situation. So we do have a daily business show starting up that can help you. And now we did draw into a piece of ice, whether we are really scared of central servers. We only know that there's 1 Stargate in the list, and that's not coming down anytime soon, it doesn't look like. And still also the ace-ups in hand I've had worse. You're going to explode out of this board state.
Chris, the 1 piece of ice he drew is the 1 piece of ice that Jonas has a breaker for.
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. 1 MK Ultra coming down early in the bin.
And Jonas isn't that afraid of the other ice either, right? Toll Booth is still pretty rough to lose. Enigma, you feel sad that you hit it, but it doesn't hurt you. And then, you know, the drafters you break, the IP blocks you pay through.
This is the 2nd Apocalypse, and still, even Anima Maya really pushes out in the next turn, installs 2 cards, 3 cards with Jeeves. This will come down really quickly.
This is definitely this is rough for Chris for sure. Anima Maya.
There's that ace up, so you're going to be able to sell that guy. All these face down cards, we don't know what they were. They was after the disaster. Daily business show. Looking at the top 2, you have a Spin Doctor if you want to aggressively draw. This is a really nice card. Clicklessly card draw helps you with that Jeeves triple install. But we're opting for the Maryland install.
He doesn't take the Spin Doctor to save the tomorrow's headline. That is just sitting in archives, and he could have used it to handle that.
But I totally forgot about that one. So it's 2 Marylands on the table. Those things keep coming back, surviving the apocalypses. 1 shuffle back.
Yep.
And still something in server 11 that looks suspiciously like a Bologna that Nimamai is just offshoring. Wildcat Strike. Do we have a choice here? It's never a card draw.
You never give them card draw here. Yeah. No. Card draw. I mean, Chris especially doesn't know there's an APOC, but does know there's 2 breakers missing. So like there's so many reasons not to do card draw here. And I think Jonas is taking a great line of just saying, I have a huge economic lead. The best way to leverage an economic lead against an asset deck is to stop them from ever getting back in the game.
Yeah.
And he can do that by just trashing these assets. He doesn't have anything to respect. It's not CTM, so he doesn't take tags while doing this.
Let alone lose ability is being relevant while just pressuring the board down. Thrown out a paperclip. We're looking to an Amani and an Anoetic off the top. Only can keep 1 of these, but that Stargate is in hand. You can drop that on the table. If we want to do a count, again, Stargate got a fair bit worse with all these Spin Doctors flying around, but we're 1 Spin Doctor out of the game. We do know, only we know, that there's 1 on the bottom of R&D, so that one's far away from home.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to take the slightly contrary take, but I don't think Stargate gets, like, yes, it's worse, and then it doesn't get you the points immediately. But Spin Doctor is a resource just like anything else in the game. And so Stargate helps, you have all the normal dynamics of removing and using spin doctors up, and now Stargate puts extra pressure on the Corp's Stargate spin doctor plans.
That's definitely true. It still makes them it forces them to be used in a different way, and it forces you to still aggressively defend things. But
yeah,
when we have server 11 Anoetic Void going on top of just a Jeeves model Biroids, it looks like that Jeeves is going to be replaced with an agenda sooner than later.
I'm wondering if Chris is trying to do a little bit of mind games here, saying, oh, this is a piece of ice you can't break. This is either an agenda in server 11, like trying to present some kind of threat to make Jonas use his last apocalypse a little bit early.
Last click draw? Getting an Enigma, a really strange line of play here. Not sure if Chris is just valuing more cards in hand if he feels like he wants the Anoetic Void to protect the Jeeves as a bait, but that doesn't seem too relevant. The drafter, though, mind you, we do have a breaker for.
Yeah, I think as Jonas here, like the thing about this near Earth helpless, you don't mind if it gets 2 points.
Yeah,
it's
you
not
don't
going to win
care.
the game because it has an agenda scored. So I would definitely look at something like, oh, let's Stargate and see if I can start trashing ice off of R&D.
Yeah, Stargate, there's so many targets. Ice, obviously, they're stopped drawing, but no, we're going in. That's a drafter. Going to force 5 credits out of our Wilder. MK Ultra coming from the bin. Actually, even less. We saved some credits off of the Paladin Puemo. So only 3 credits to get through.
Yeah, and then Chris has to spend 2 just to make Jonas spend 3 to go in again.
And not only 2 credits, but 2 cards as well.
Yeah, I think, though, you have some easy choices. The exchange and the psychographics are just not going to be relevant. So they're basically just diluting the Beal in hand.
But you have to throw the Beal. You can't keep just a Beal in HQ.
No, you just let them through. You just let Jonas through, I think, on this one. You say, I just traded 5 credits for 6. That's sort of the best I can hope to do here.
Lou, bringing out that Anoetic Void for largely free, gaining a card, finding another Black Orchestra, leaving the Jeeves there in the remote server again. That doesn't present enough threat to spend 5 credits on it.
Yeah. The Jeeves can accumulate value for Chris slowly over the course of the game, but Big Unit feels like Jonas feels like he's got a big enough lead that is not too relevant. I would generally agree.
Yeah.
You want to draw up here to get this Black Orchestra discarded, because now you can literally break every card in this Near Earth Hub list with cash or the breakers you have available to you.
So 0 just came down. I don't know if that's something that Unit wants to use with Apocalypse in hand. Maybe you just end up pawn shopping that away?
That is an option. I think you're actually okay with it. Chris is rebuilding so slowly, you might even have time to get all the way through your deck and labor rights to put the apocalypses back in this case. So, we lost
the labor rights. How many are we on in the list?
There's, I believe, 3.
Wow,
Let
okay.
me check. No, just 2, excuse me.
Okay, so 1 more.
Yeah, but Snare Bears were the only group that put labor rights in their apocalypse deck.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think a lot of times you get to the end game too. That's just like liberated accounts, right? Just to hold down when your economy dries up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I could maybe see. Yes. Okay. So selling the 0. So basically, the 0 was a click for 2 credits, which is totally reasonable.
Even selling the MK Ultra is interesting too, right? Because eventually you stall it for cheaper anyways with Paladin. But hey, we're checking the NASEX on the remote server, and this is the idea. You can spend 4 on the NASEX. You can spend 5 on what used to be the Jeeves, but the Apocalypse is just technically cheaper. We're charging the remote server, Enigma not res. This is just a free Beal going for 3 credits.
Yeah, Chris doesn't have the credit total for this.
And there's the game-winning point. The 4-0 split. It's 4-0 sweep is just in hand. A Bologna sitting pretty. That Daily Business Show also staying on the table. I think Jonas is just waiting until a bit more of a board state is built before they go and pursue that Apocalypse.
Yeah, and Hiramani Sanai is almost blank because Chris's ability to score looks pretty grim from this board state. Not impossible. Things can happen, but there's not that many tricks in this Near Earth Helpless. It doesn't have the ability of CTM to slow down the trash. It just sort of says, "Oh, I'm going to try and use my draw to put down more threats than you can handle." But when you're down 3 to 17 credits, it's really hard for that to be true.
Jonas running HQ 1 and 4 to take the whole series, just finding a pad campaign again. This is not an Apocalypse turn. We did spend a click on server 15. This list must have that brain damage card that gives you extra clicks, right?
No. Snare Bears went very, very light on tech.
Wow.
I almost would have liked to see the pad campaign trash because it ends up only costing 3 credits because you draws you
Yeah.
a card because you're Lou.
Chris now down onto only 2 credits. The sandbox also showing up in hand. No real strategy to deal with that anytime soon. Pad campaign hit the remote. Mamba in the remote server with ice, and another daily business show not being rezzed.
Just trying to present threats so that Jonas goes other places.
I think we're blowing this up.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think we are. We pawned a breaker. Harding news on HQ. We're going to find tomorrow's headline if we go archives. Yeah. Top of R&D.
You called it right, yeah.
Because like that trash is
so you're going to end with
so many cards. You end with a tag, right? Because of the headline?
You'll end with a tag, but there's no single tag punishment. The exchange of information is blank.
Yeah.
The psychographics doesn't, it's exactly the same. You're spending a card to take a basic action. And that's sort of it,
That is
again
sort of it is a pretty good description at this point in the game.
Yeah, it's you could I think maybe some of these like CTM and NEH lists should maybe think about playing 1 to 2 predictive planograms just to handle this case where the runner says, "Yeah, I'll float a tag. What are you going to do to me?"
Stargate going down to Monty Sinai's a bait in their Mozart. I love that play off the top. We see Rashida Jeeves toll booth. I reckon you can just trash the toll booth, run back if you really want to, Rashida, but checking archives seems nice. Oh, actually, no, not that nice.
Justice. I think you probably I guess no, you don't have to trash the Rashida because you can just he can't install it and protect it in almost any scenario here.
Yeah. It's better than drawing a card, right? Because it's the same thing.
Oh, that's true. This is better than drawing a card.
And also, it gets you a bit deeper on Stargate, which can be nice, but 17 clicks a tag, the Citadel is just going to come back turns later.
Hey. Just so rude here. Just not letting up the, Jonas is in the dominant position here to take the 4-0 against the process, and is just trying to make sure there's no lines where he doesn't win. And I think there's no reason not to check these servers, right?
That is the exact one in the middle is a Cyberdeck sandbox, an abstract threat with the Jeeves, but the credits are short.
Well, that's so suspicious. I think we have to call stream sniping on it. And
good pick. I have no doubt he would have checked all of them. I don't think there's anything
for sure
that there is need to do. It's always the middle one. That is a big aloof. Yeah, that's a aloof for sure. 18 to 83 credits. Just nothing spinning up there on the board state. No explosive assets, and Lou has good reasons to trash everything, let alone the Apocalypse. Going to make that a bit easier.
Yeah. Well, Jonas determined to make sure that this is the shortest of all of the fight nights, and
been
the most lopsided.
Oh no! Oh wow!
Well, hopefully no one wants to show up. No one thinks, "Oh, it's gone for 4 hours every other time. I can tune in late." And it's crazy, I think across these 4 games, it's been maybe 40 turns. The first ASA game was 8 or something like that. It was wild.
Yeah, the first game was incredibly fast.
And then sort of everyone had to slow play a little bit more. But, this was a relatively quick 4 games, and I think some really well played ones all around. And I think kind of highlights. I didn't catch all of your interview with Eric. I had to go to bed at some point yesterday. But I know you guys talked about sort of there's the top couple of corp decks and then a tier of runner decks that just sort of stomp on every other corp below them. And this Apocalypse Lou is really one of those things that just, if your deck, you have to build your deck ready to handle it, and it's so hard to do it with the tools that list has available to it.
But every single deck that we've seen today, every single corp deck, like all of them are going relatively horizontal, barring maybe some of the Wayland decks, but some of them are still pretty loose on ice and fast advancing out. But like as a meta for an Apocalypse deck, like it's gonna work. I think the biggest thing I'm so surprised about, and we've talked about this so many times, the fact that, hey, this is my Ocelot group list, this is my whole deck list. Yeah, there's 3 Harding news on it, still lines up as a pretty dominant strategy to pursue.
Yeah, I mean, we saw basically the thing that list got with the release of Gateway was Nico campaign. And that's that little bit of extra money and a really nice asset that gives you draw as well when it gets all the way seems to be and also luminal transubstantiation. Like the rest of this list. Okay, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. There are a couple of cards also. Spin Doctor is probably the other huge one for this
Yeah,
list.
that's a really big deal for sure.
All of those just combine to make it makes your highs even higher, and it increases your consistency a whole lot and makes you much safer to agenda flood.
Yo, for a deck that like draws so heavily, Asa with cards like like fully operational, having that single seamless launch and your opponent knowing you have a single seamless launch, I love that idea. It just like opens up so many possible plays, even if you don't have access to that single card, that forces your opponent to respect it if they choose to, which is pretty wild.
No, this is a really. Having seen Jonas play this, I would expect that JNet Casual and myself are going to have playing a lot more of this list. So
yeah. Pack your misdirections, huh?
Oh,
yeah, yo, Kat, that would be lovely. I need to add them onto Discord though. I don't know them on Discord. Hold on, I'll ping you. Yeah, we're gonna see if we can get Jonas into the stream chat. Just give us 1 second if you're tuning in. Are they on Discord?
Yeah, I'm a little bummed we didn't get to see the sports medal list. I would have loved to have seen how that did. It looked to me like the process was going to struggle fighting it. But I think also one of the things you were talking about is, all the courts we saw were going horizontal. And I think the reason for that is actually Hive Mind Max, because of how heavily that deck preys on vertical lists.
Yeah.
Vertical lists can do pretty well against Apocalypse. We see, Precision Design, which isn't that glacier-y, but can play kind of glacier, has learned to sort of play around Apocalypse. But if you're any slower than that Precision Design list is, Hive Mind Max just sort of runs over you because it's set up and can start saying, oh yeah, res your 8 strength Hull Booth. I'll de-res it for free, basically. Like,
it's a
tranquilizer
huge issue.
Yeah. So it's just this, we're stuck in this really odd meta equilibrium. And I think there's parts of it I like. I also get why it's not everyone's favorite. But I like playing all of the top tier decks, I think, to some degree, or trying to find ways to make something like Jonas's ASO work, which makes me a happy camper. But I think it's pretty reasonable that it's maybe not everyone's most loved meta. So
hey, we're actually joined by Jonas. Jonas, how's it going? Can you hear us?
Hi guys, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's great. Yo, welcome. Huge congrats on a 4-0 sweep. That is something, I don't know if we've ever seen that in the history of the Fite Nite, have we?
Not that I remember. No, I certainly haven't watched any of that. I've been a clean sweep.
Yeah, huge congrats. The rest of your team just taking the whole day off there, just watching you perform. Before we dive into your decks, I just want to ask, because there's a huge strategy here when it comes to like who goes first against what your opposition think is going to go first, and then bouncing between the matchups. Was there a lot of strategy in your team pushing you as the front runner there? Were you meant to be like the big wall to get past, or did it just make sense as a first pick corp?
Well, I think that we didn't really know what the other teams were going to put up and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I think that my team. I think that we agreed that we wanted to put me up because I didn't have any kind of like concrete weaknesses. So it's not that I don't think that my decks were necessarily the best decks per se, but they weren't really vulnerable to counter picks or anything like that. So if I win the first game, then the process gets to say, oh, okay, if you're playing, like a fast advanced deck, let's just put in Max with Clot or something.
Right. So they can like fix the second matchup in their favor.
Exactly, yeah. So, the idea is that, if I go in first and, manage to take it, then, it might be a little bit harder to figure out what the next move is for them.
Right on. And when it came to picking this like ASO group list, which I think we have both a couple questions about this list because it seems a bit atypical, obviously, from what other stuff we've seen recently. How did you get to this list? Is this like a personal project of yours, or did you find yourself being given this list due to the fact that everyone had to play a different, technically faction or identity, or technically identity, I suppose?
So I've been playing this list for almost like a year. It feels like years now. It feels like it's just part of my identity. But like I definitely played it back in back in the days before system update and stuff like that, it had multiple iterations with like, Lakshmis and MCA austerities and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it just kind of popped off a little bit with all the new system update cards and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been playing this for a while. I think that, Eric, another one of the Snare Bears, did very well with it in the Intercontinentals, I believe it is.
No, that's correct. Yeah, you're totally right
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, so he did really well with that. I think that Beckett also took that version as well. Beckett being, I believe, the kid on Slack.
Yeah.
And but yeah, this one, when all the new cards and stuff like that came out, I just, kind of built, this shell or whatever, and just got very comfortable with it.
Yo, what do you think specifically about White Space as one of the newer ice that's like on the cusp of finding inclusion in decks?
I mean, I like White Space a lot. Like it's not my favorite ice to play or install. I like Slot Machine a lot more.
Yeah, right.
But being able to play stuff like IP blocks and then also being able to play White Space gives you a lot of kind of flexibility to say, do you have all Makua or do you not have all Makua?
Yeah, I guess I was a little surprised by White Space over Enigma just because it gives you a lot more vulnerability to Amakua. I guess
Absolutely.
the 3 IP block sort of covers you the other way.
Yeah, no, I mean it's and the whole idea behind the deck is just go as fast as possible, and if they get through a couple of times, that's fine. You just don't want them to get through on like a doof run or an apocalypse or something like that. And so this is just basically a very big tempo ice that you put in front of your Rashida turn 1 or something like that. And a lot of the kind of what I like about the deck is it's kind of like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, where you've got all these different kind of servers and stuff like that, and Vanilla's good early, but then they find a solution for that, and so then you move to another server, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's definitely been one of my favorite things of playing. I've been playing a more regular MCA ASA this year and was playing a reconstruction contract ASA last year, and that was always the fun part of okay, you found an answer for this server, let me just move over to another one, and you have to start all over again. And also, Gatekeeper quietly being probably one of the best cards in the deck when terminals are trying to install Amina all the time.
I mean, pretty much every ice has, a role to play and stuff like that. Gatekeeper, being strength 6 is pretty great. Drafter, if that ever even manages to fire and you get a flop back, it's, kind of lights out there as well. It's just a very flexible deck. And so, yeah, I definitely enjoy it. I'm glad that I rolled Corp this time. Because if I ended up just playing 2 runner decks or runner games and that's it, that would have been a pretty sad way to go out.
So we mentioned this before, right? The idea of finding hard-hitting news within an ASA group list is something that would, I think, absolutely be incredibly destructive. Something that we might tend to refer to as Swiss cheese. Something that you show up in a Jinteki.net casual lobby or show up to an early parts of a tournament where deck lists aren't public. But the fact that, like, this is what I've been so impressed about, is that even knowing that this card is here, knowing that the threat is here, and even going out of your way to respect it, you see how much threat it still generates on top of everything else the deck can do. It's absolutely so cool to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely, Swiss cheese and stuff like that. I feel bad, playing it.
No, but this tournament proves the other part of the argument, which I that feels good. I like that a lot.
I feel like it's the ASA deck to beat, in my opinion. The other ASA decks are kind of slow and stuff like that, and if you're gonna be playing a regular game, you're best served out of PD, precision design.
Yeah, I do think this list has a nice reason to say the fully op and hard hitting news leave you with a nice reason to not be precision design, because precision design, while it can make a lot of money and kind of obnoxious ways is maybe a polite way of saying it. It can't actually get a huge credit. It can't battle the runner for credits in quite the same way. It's very good at staying always around 10, but it's never really going to get to 20, which you need to do to land hard uses in some board states.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, swinging over to the runner side. So you're on, after the Anarch slot in everybody's lineup has gone to a Virus Max, you have the Anarch Lu deck. We've seen a couple decks like this floating around Netrunner DB. I think there's some key differences. You're looking right now at only 2 Apocalypse, only 1 single copy of Moshing was something that was a pretty huge shout out in the last list that we've seen this on. Can you talk about how you ended up on this deck? Did you feel like you were doing like, okay, 419 is gone, Max is gone, I guess I'll play the next best thing? Do you feel like it's a big drop down, or were you really happy to enter this tournament with this deck list?
Yeah, I was definitely, happy to enter the tournament with, Apocalypse. I'm comfortable with an Apocalypse deck. So, a lot of deck choices, I think from every team are, what do you feel comfortable with? And I do think it's, a good. I think that, the 3 runner decks that you're going to want to run are, Reg 419. Apocalypse, Shaper, and Virus Max. And then you've got one other flex slot. And, Sunny was actually a pretty good choice by NWE.
Yeah, that worked out.
But, there's, the one flex slot. And I think that, APOC Anarch is probably one of the... I think everybody brought an APOC Anarch as well.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, it was everyone brought a max of 419 and an APOC Lu. And then it was the last slot, whether you were doing APOC Tau or doing the meta call of Sunny, because everyone's going to bring a CTM, I think was the idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess actually, so there's a couple of, you guys were the only ones running 0. I guess, the obvious reason I guess most people weren't running 0 was hitting the Apocalypse. Why do you guys feel like that was an outcome you're fine with?
So I guess I kind of have a different, philosophy or play style with the deck. I think that 0 is very good for getting to the bottom of your deck quickly. I think it's more efficient than moshing, especially if you sequence your plays. I think that it's it just, it installs free with, Paladin. I've got 2 pawn shops, so, I'm, pawning for, I pawn like the 0 for value and stuff like that. There's, I don't know, it just, it felt very good in the CTM game to be able to just 1 out of 3 that I've had worse in hand and just be able to say, okay, now I have a full grip and I know how I'm gonna, set up for next turn or something.
Yeah, I think everyone else was sort of playing their Lu decks or their APOC decks as like one shot through the deck. That's why they're packing 3 Apocalypses. That's why they go with stuff like the Moshings, I guess. But Snare Bears, you guys seem to have landed. And I don't know how much this is a U list versus like a team built list of saying, no, we're going to dig to the bottom and then we're going to do a little bit of what Hive Mind Max does, where you just use Labor Rights to recur the best 3 or to 6 cards that will work in this scenario.
Yeah. And, and we have 2 pawn shop and stuff like that. So a lot of it is, you can, get to the bottom of your deck and then you don't worry about breakers or anything like that anymore. You just reset up and you say, okay, now you build your board and I'll build my board again.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, you can, start coming out on top if you, are able to, get to that bottom of your deck quickly.
I guess one question I have, just out of curiosity, have you ever rebirthed into anything other than Omar when testing that list?
Yeah. So versus some of the macrophage CTMs, I've definitely rebirthed as Ed Kim. The link is very relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We were
That's
debating.
it.
We were debating on stream against that CTM list that had 2 Mumbed virtual tours. If you'd want to rebirth into Freedom potentially, just to handle those for 0 credits.
Yeah, Freedom would have definitely been the other call, just because, handling it for 0 credits is great, and it's optional, so that, if you hit a Psycho or something like that, you can trash it, but you're not, bound if you hit something else that you don't want to trash and you get an Ares tag.
Yeah, exactly. When they have 2 Ares, you want to choose when you score, not just, oh, oops, I happen to draw the Psycho that was a dead card, and now I've turned it into a live card.
Yeah.
When they can recur it.
But, I was on my back foot the last part of the game. I just had to kind of hold on because, he had the inevitability with those 2 Ares scored. So I just had to kind of wait. And, the Omar was definitely going to, or I was definitely going to rebirth into Omar that game and hit R&D if, I didn't just hit 2 out of HQ like a Luxac.
Yeah, well, so we got to see it. At one point, I think at one point his hand was 4 agendas, I think.
Yeah.
And he sort of slowly piloted it out.
Yeah, there was one turn where the turn really slowed down, trying to figure out how to make the best of the worst situation. And I don't know if you remember that turn specifically, trying to get a read on
I
that.
remember the big hand after like a Rashida fire or something.
Yeah, that was rough a bit. But no, you know, as much as this deck is called Blank ID APOC, and admittedly you ran against 2 of the wider acid heavy NBN decks, like the ability fired, enough. I think that you don't feel awful about just playing a 40 card Blank ID, which is nice to see, but I have no doubt that's pretty dependent on the matchup.
Yeah, no, it's useful enough. Yeah, it's better than playing Nat.
Yeah, I guess that's always an option, huh?
The high bar to clear there.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Jonas, huge congrats. Seeing that 4-0 sweep is absolutely fantastic, and great games to boot. Both decks are really exciting to watch.
Thanks for hosting and streaming this. This was, an absolutely wonderful event.
Of course.
And, thanks to the organizers as well.
Yeah, we need to give some huge shout outs, of course, to organizing. Vale has put this together. This is a couple of years in a row, if I'm not mistaken, reaching out to all these teams, getting all this organized, making the rule set, posting it, publishing everything, getting all the time working together. It's a lot of effort. So huge shout out to Vale. On top of that, while we didn't see everybody exactly playing today, all the players getting the time and testing and availability for these fun Fight Night show matches. Huge shout out to everyone. Again, NWE has already played their 2 matches, taking home both of them, and now Snare Bears and the process we saw today. So congrats everyone for coming out and playing, putting on a good show for so many people. I want to give a huge shout out also to Yusengrin. Thanks for joining. Again, check out Yusengrin SC on YouTube, and Kat as well. Kat, you can find their art Kizra on Make Playing Cards if you want to get some stuff shipped your way. Also a member of Snare Bears.
Thanks so much for having me on, Andre, and thanks Jonas and the rest of Snare Bears for putting on a great show, and the process. I shouldn't slight them at all. They played some really good games.
They played great.
It's been a lot of fun to watch, commentate, and I'm really glad that good players are doing these sort of events to share some cool stuff we can all learn from, and decks we can try and play ourselves.
Yeah.
So.
And again, if you're into the competitive Netrunner, we have, or Nisei has, the Continental is starting in just a couple of weeks. So the signups for that are still nice and open. So do get in on that if you'd like to. And that's going to be all for this stream. Thanks again. Congrats, Jonas. And we'll be seeing y'all back in a bit. Ciao.